Chapter 396. Li Mu really didn't dare to have any objections to what the Empress had said. If he rejected her now, after tonight, he would have to beg the Empress to move into Changel Palace the next morning. She looked quite magnanimous, but in reality, she was more petty than anyone else. If she was slightly dissatisfied, Li Mu would just have to wait to meet her in her dreams at night. Besides, she also promised to help Xiao Bai and Wanwan evolve. This was also something Li Mu couldn't reject. With Wanwan and Xiao Bai's current cultivation, there was already very little that Li Mu could help them with. However, following the Empress would undoubtedly bring them great benefits. He didn't dare to say that he could help them reach Realm 6, but it wouldn't be a problem to help them reach Realm 5 or Realm 4. Under Mr. Mei's lead, Wanwan and Xiao Bai went to the Imperial kitchen to clean out. After all, she was his silly girl. She was so unruly. Li Mu felt a little embarrassed. He explained, when she was young, Wanwan's hometown was in a famine. When her parents brought her to escape, they left her on the road to save food for her younger brother. She almost starved to death. Later, she was lucky enough to survive, but she ended up with the problem of not being able to eat enough. Wanwan's illness was psychological, not physical. In the past, Li Mu was worried that her body would have problems eating, but now he didn't have to worry. As long as she liked, she could eat as much as she wanted. Zhou Yi said somewhat angrily. Should she be abandoned just because she's a girl? Li Mu couldn't answer her. Many people in Great Zhou still had the goal of continuing the family line as their life goal. The idea of favoring boys over girls was the mainstream in the hearts of the people. Li Mu could say, not everyone likes sons. I prefer daughters. One of the most romantic things for a man is to have a cute daughter. Buy her the most beautiful clothes, make her the most fun toys, and spoil her like a little princess. Zhou Yi looked at him and asked, you want your daughter to become a princess? Li Mu was stunned for a moment before he explained, it's just a metaphor. If his daughter was a princess, the Empress would have to give him the position of emperor. Zhou Yi thought about it and said, since you don't like sons so much, give your first son to me. Li Mu looked at her in a daze, his face full of confusion. Why should I pass the throne to an outsider? The Xiao family is not united with me, and I am no longer a member of the Zhou Yi. Your first son was sent to my side when he was born, and he took my surname. I taught him to cultivate from a young age, and you taught him how to govern the country. I believe that when he grows up, he will definitely be a qualified emperor. Li Mu had thought that the Empress had already exploited him enough. He had not thought that she could go even further. Not only did she have designs on him, but she also had plans for his unborn son's life. Li Mu flatly refused. That won't do. Even if I agree, my wife won't. Zhou Yi said. That might not be the case. Li Mu shook his head and said, even if they agree, I won't. Zhou Yi asked, I want to raise your son as the future emperor. Why won't you agree? Li Mu had no reason to agree. He was the future headmaster of the Fulu school. His son could be considered the second generation of an immortal. His status was not lower than that of the Great Zhou's crown prince. Moreover, in the history of the Great Zhou, none of the emperors had lived long. He knew how tiring it was to review memorials. How could he let his own son suffer like this? He did not answer directly. Instead, he looked at the Empress and said, if your Majesty wants a son, why go through so much trouble? The Empress's eyes narrowed slightly. She looked at him and asked, what did you say? Li Mu looked back at Shangguan Li, who was standing at the door, and said, Commander Shangguan is still young. She is also loyal to your Majesty. She is not an outsider. If your Majesty doesn't want to pass on the Xiao and Zhou families, you can let Commander Shangguan bear a son. Shangguan Li, who was eating melons, glared at Li Mu fiercely. She clasped her hands and said, Your Majesty, I don't like men. No wonder Li Mu always looked at her with anger. She didn't like men, so he couldn't force her. Li Mu said, and Mr. Mei? Mr. Mei walked in from outside and asked, What's wrong with me? Li Mu said, I'm praising you for being loyal to your Majesty. I'm a little hungry. I'll go to the kitchen to find something to eat. You guys talk. After saying this, he quickly walked out of the Changel Palace. Li Mu deeply experienced the Empress's laziness again. Her laziness in the past was just to let Li Mu help her approve the memorials. Now she was so lazy that she didn't even want to have a child herself. Unfortunately, Li Mu couldn't do this for her. Besides, he and Lu Hanyan didn't plan to have a child so early. The Empress's wishful thinking couldn't be realized so easily. In order to prevent the Empress from having any ideas about him, he couldn't let her have a child or help her have a child. In the following days, Li Mu didn't mention this matter again. Living in the imperial palace was far more boring than Li Mu imagined. In order not to be seen by the officials of the Shangya, he had to get up early every day and travel between the Changle Palace and the Secretariat. Occasionally he would go to the kitchen to cook a bowl of noodles and a cup of soup for the Empress. After a long time, Li Mu wasn't the only one who couldn't stand it. Even Wanwan and Xiaobai weren't as lively as they were at the beginning. Although the imperial palace was good, and to Wanwan, it was heaven. However, if she stayed here every day, heaven would become a prison. In the Changle Palace, Li Mu finished approving the memorials, and saw the two girls leaning on the table listlessly with one hand supporting their cheeks. He thought for a moment and said, "Why don't we go outside the palace to play tomorrow?" Okay. Wanwan and Xiaobai's eyes lit up, and they immediately got up from the table. These days they had been bored to death. It just so happened that there was no morning court tomorrow, and it was also a rest day. Li Mu turned to look at the Empress, who was lying lazily on the chair reading a book, and asked, "Your Majesty, do you want to go together?" Zhou Yi's attention had been on Li Mu since just now. Hearing this, she said unhurriedly, "You arrange it." It was just an ordinary trip, and there was nothing to arrange. As long as they could leave this cage-like imperial palace, even if it was just to find a place to enjoy the scenery, they would be in a much better mood. They left the imperial palace together the next day. Outside the divine capital, Li Mu chose a mountain with a nice view. He used magic to clear an empty space and spread out a clean blanket. Then he placed some pastries and preserved fruits that he had prepared from the imperial kitchen on top of it. Mr. Mei and Sheng Guanli set up a stove not far away, and they would barbecue meat later. After Wanwan and Xiaobai left the imperial palace, they went wild, chasing rabbits and catching pheasants. Li Mu lay on the stall with his hands behind his head. Everywhere he looked, there was only the blue sky. At this moment, the gloominess and depression in his heart were swept away. As expected, a place like the imperial palace couldn't be stayed for too long. Looking at the square sky all the time was not good for one's health. Zhou Yi sat on the blanket and looked at the barren hills around her. With a flick of her finger, a crystal light was flicked into the soil. As a result, green buds began to appear on the barren land around them. Soon, grass began to grow, and colorful wildflowers bloomed. The air soon emitted a refreshing fragrance. Zhou Yi lay beside Li Mu and looked up at the sky with him. After a while she said softly, "It's almost the new year." If she didn't remind him, Li Mu wouldn't have realized that it was really the new year. Li Mu was forced to stay in Changle Palace by the Empress, and did the work she was supposed to do day and night. Apart from Changle Palace and the Secretariat, she didn't go out and didn't take a step out. She had already lost track of time. He didn't expect that he couldn't spend the first New Year with Lu Hanyan and Li Qing. Cultivators didn't pay much attention to the new year. The old men of Mount Baiyun spent most of their time in seclusion. They could be said to have truly transcended the secular world. However, Li Mu couldn't. He hoped that on New Year's Eve, his family could gather together and have a New Year's Eve dinner. The Empress reminded him. Li Mu took out the sound transmission magic treasure that Xian Jizi gave him. After activating it, he said, "Senior brother, help me find Qingqing." Zhou Yi glanced at Li Mu and closed her eyes. Her chest heaved slightly. As Li Mu's voice fell, Lu Hanyan's voice came from the magic treasure. Qingqing, do you only have Qingqing in your heart? She's in seclusion and doesn't have time to talk to you. Li Mu said awkwardly. Didn't you follow senior sister to visit other sects? Why are you still at Mount Baiyun? Lu Hanyan said, We haven't left yet. Why are you looking for Qingqing? Li Mu said without hesitation, I miss you guys. Lu Hanyan said sourly, You only have Qingqing in your heart. Li Mu took a while to coax her. Then he asked, It's New Year's Eve soon. Are you guys going back to Chengdu for New Year's? Lu Hanyan said. She's in seclusion. I'm going to Xuanzong with Master soon. I can't go back. Li Mu was a little disappointed. He said, all right then. After putting away the sound transmission magic treasure, Li Mu looked at the Empress. Seeing her arms crossed, he asked in surprise, Your Majesty, what's wrong? Zhou said lightly, Nothing, I just feel a little cold. Although the weather wasn't too warm, she wouldn't feel cold even if it was 100 degrees colder. Li Mu knew that she was probably choked by their public display of affection. He didn't dare to point it out. He said, They're not coming back this year. Why don't we make do at Changel Palace for New Year's Eve? Zhou glanced at him and said, Why do you have to make do? If they can't come back, you can go to Mount Baiyun to find them. What she said made sense. Li Mu nodded and said, Then I'll take a leave first. After the 15th, I'll return to Chengdu. Zhou took a deep breath and asked, You're not going to attend the court assembly on the first day of the new year, right? Can I not attend? What do you think? Li Mu thought about it and decided not to. The court assembly only happened once a year. It wasn't good to miss it. Moreover, Li Qing would be in seclusion and Lu Hanyan wouldn't be in Beijun. If he went to Mount Baiyun, would he have to eat with those old men? He might as well stay in Changel Palace and make do with the Empress. Thinking of this, he shook his head and said, Then I won't invite you. Zhou said, You can invite me. I approve your leave. Li Mu said firmly, I won't invite you. Zhou looked at him and said, I gave you a chance but you didn't want it. Don't say that I'm harsh on you in the future. Li Mu went against his conscience and said with difficulty, Your Majesty, you're not harsh on me at all. Li Mu sighed a few times in his heart. Then he lay down obediently and enjoyed this rare leisure time while enjoying the mountain breeze. Halfway up the mountain, near the peak, 3 figures walked slowly on the mountain path. Zhang Chun sighed and said, Madam, listen to me. I went to the brothel last time to catch someone, not to do anything else. We've been married for so many years. Don't we trust each other at all? Madam Zhang said, I believe you. But where did you go the night I kicked you out? Zhang Chun said, I found an inn to sleep in. Madam Zhang asked, Didn't you go to the Li residence? His wife isn't in Fairy's capital. There's no one at home. Why didn't you stay at his place? Zhang Chun said, He's not at home. Madam Zhang said in surprise, His wife just left and he's not going home at night. That can't be. Li Mu isn't that kind of person. Zhang Chun waved his hand and said, Don't worry about that. Madam Zhang said unhappily, What do you mean don't worry about that? If he's really that kind of person, you should stay away from him. Don't be led astray by him. Zhang Chun shook his head and said, Don't interrupt if you don't understand. Enjoy the scenery. It's not easy to get a day off. The scenery here is not bad. At this time, the family of 3 had reached the peak. Zhang Yi looked up at the empty space in the distance and said, There's someone there. Zhang Chun looked over, and happened to meet the eyes of a woman. Madame Zhang was shocked and said, Isn't that Li Mu? Who's the woman beside him? They're alone in broad daylight. What are they doing in the wilderness? I didn't expect him to really be that kind of. Before Madame Zhang could finish her words, Zhang Chun covered her mouth. After that, he held Madame Zhang in one hand and his daughter in the other, and flew down the mountain on a cloud. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. Li Mu looked in the direction the Empress was looking and asked, Your Majesty, what's wrong? The Empress retracted her gaze and said, Nothing. A few deer ran past just now. Speaking of deer, Li Mu remembered that he brought half a deer leg from the imperial kitchen today. He put it in the space of the flask heaven and marinated it with honey. He stood up and said, Your Majesty, rest for a while. I'll go prepare the barbecue. He walked to a place not far away and took out the deer leg and some barbecue that he had prepared. He put them on the grill and put charcoal under it. Barbecue with charcoal was much better than barbecue with magic power. At the same time, on the main peak of Mount Baiyun, Li Qing looked at Lu Hanyan beside her and said helplessly, Why don't you tell him? Lu Hanyan snorted and said, Who knows what he's been doing after we left the divine capital? This time we'll sneak back and catch him by surprise. If he's obedient, it'll be a surprise. If he's not obedient, humph. She looked at Li Qing and said, I know you care about him, but you can't tell him in advance. We have to stand on the same side. Otherwise, if there really is a fifth or sixth person in the future, it'll be too late for you to cry. Li Qing nodded and said, I'll listen to you. Outside the divine capital, on the top of a barren mountain with beautiful scenery, Zhou Yi took a small piece of deer meat that Li Mu cut with a knife and said, Left Assistant Minister Zhang Chun of the Ministry of Personnel. He's already a 4th rank official. Go back and check if there are any empty 5th rank residences in the imperial court. Give them to him. Li Mu had planned to find an opportunity to help old Zhang next year. Since the Empress mentioned it, he could arrange it for him now. He nodded and said, Yes, Your Majesty. North Court. When Li Mu handed the title deed of a certain 5th rank residence to Zhang Chun, he was not as happy as Li Mu imagined, but he still patted him on the shoulder and said, Thank you, brother. Li Mu shook his head and said, No need to thank me. This time, the Empress rewarded you on her own initiative. Zhang Chun said, It's all the same, all the same. Li Mu looked behind Zhang Chun and saw Madame Zhang giving him a strange look. Then she turned and walked into the room. Li Mu looked away and asked in confusion, What's wrong with Madame Zhang? Did I offend her in any way? Zhang Chun waved his hand and said, Ignore her. It's just a woman's opinion. He took the title deed, patted his chest and said, Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I'll say what I should say, and I won't say anything that I shouldn't say. Li Mu looked at him in confusion and asked, What are you talking about? Zhang Chun looked at Li Mu and was stunned for a moment. Then he also looked confused and said, Yes, what am I talking about? I don't know anything. I didn't see anything. Haha. Li Mu felt that old Zhang was strange today, but he couldn't tell what. He walked through the streets, and there were still countless people greeting him warmly. Lord Li, long time no see. Did you leave the divine capital a while ago? Yes, I haven't seen Lord Li for at least half a month. Did Lord Li go out on business? Li Mu smiled at the people and nodded. Yes, I went out for more than half a month. Since the last picnic, Li Mu would take Wan Wan and Xiao Bai out of the palace every few days. Under his invitation, the Empress reluctantly agreed. After changing her appearance, she went shopping with them, ate at the roadside stalls, and bought some cheap jewelry that cost a few coins. When she agreed, she was more reluctant than anyone else, but when it came to shopping, she was more excited than anyone else. The things she bought alone were more than Wan Wan and Xiao Bai combined. Although most of them were useless, she still enjoyed it and never got tired of it. A few days before the new year, the divine capital was bustling and joyous. On New Year's Eve, Li Mu opened the door and a cold breeze hit him in the face. He looked up at the sky. The sky was gray, and snowflakes were floating in the air. Although the divine capital wasn't in the south, it rarely snowed in the winter. The snowflakes fell on the ground and quickly melted. It's snowing. Wan Wan and Xiao Bai ran out of the room barefooted. They stood in the courtyard and opened their arms to embrace the snowflakes. Li Mu slapped their butts and said, Go back and put on your clothes and shoes before coming out. Wan Wan and Xiao Bai loved snow. They wanted to build a few snowmen to play with. Unfortunately, the snow in the divine capital wasn't heavy. It melted as soon as it touched the ground. Li Mu tried to use his magic. Although the snowflakes in front of the palace were heavier, it was still far from enough. The Empress walked out of the Changle Palace. She looked at Wan Wan and Xiao Bai who were waving at the sky in anticipation. Her hands formed a few seals, and a white light flew out from her hand and went straight to the clouds. The snowflakes suddenly became heavier and fell down. Soon, a layer of snow accumulated on the ground. Outside the palace, the people of the divine capital also walked out of their houses. They looked at the snowflakes in the sky with satisfaction. It's been a long time since the divine capital snowed so heavily. Next year will be a good year. Ever since Her Majesty ascended the throne, the lives of the people have been getting better and better. In front of the Changle Palace, Xiao Bai and Wan Wan had already built a few snowmen. Although they were called snowmen, they were more like snow sculptures. The snowmen they built didn't have round heads and big bodies. Instead, they were as tall as a person and looked very lifelike. Xiao Bai was carrying a little fox in her arms. Wan Wan was carrying 2 buns on her head. The taller figure beside her was Li Mu. Beside Li Mu was the Empress, who was wearing an imperial robe and an imperial crown. The 4 snowmen stood in front of the palace like pieces of art. Not only did they have the same figure and appearance as the others, but even their auras were similar. Wanwan looked at her masterpiece with satisfaction. Then she scratched her head and said, "I think I forgot something." Soon she remembered. She slapped her head and said, "I forgot about Miss and Sister Qing." Soon Lu Hanyan and Li Qing's snow sculptures also appeared in the square. Wanwan nodded in satisfaction and said, "This is what a family should be." Li Mu thought to himself, if Lu Hanyan didn't come back soon, her sweet little jacket would be taken away by the Empress. He walked to Wanwan and Xiaobai and asked, "Tonight, are we going home or staying here?" Wanwan said without hesitation, "Miss and Sister Qing aren't at home. Let's celebrate the new year here with Sister Zhou. There must be a lot of dishes for the New Year's Eve dinner in the palace." Zhou said, "There are more than 100 delicious dishes for the New Year's Eve dinner in the palace." Wanwan tugged at Li Mu's sleeve and whispered, "Young master." Li Mu rubbed her head and said, "Then let's stay here." On New Year's Eve, the Empress dismissed all the guards on duty. Even Mr. Mei and Shangguan Li were driven home by her. There were only 4 people left in Changle Palace. In addition to the New Year's Eve dinner prepared by the Imperial Kitchen, the 4 of them also made dumplings together. From the skin to the filling of the dumplings, they prepared everything bit by bit. In Changle Palace, the dishes were all served. The 4 of them stood in front of the table and raised their wine glasses at the same time. At the same time, North Court, Li Mansion. On New Year's Eve, Lu Hanyan and Li Qing, who had rushed back to Shendu, stood in the courtyard with confusion on their faces. Lu Hanyan scanned the entire Li Mansion with her mind. She didn't find Li Mu, Wanwan, or Xiaobai. She frowned slightly and asked in confusion, "Where are they?" On New Year's Eve, they wanted to give Li Mu a surprise. But they were the ones who were surprised. On New Year's Eve, when families reunited, where did Li Mu, Wanwan, and Xiaobai go? Lu Hanyan took out a sound-transmitting magic treasure. After activating it, she said in a bad mood, "Where are you?" In Changle Palace, Li Mu heard the voice from the sound-transmitting magic treasure in his hand and said in surprise, You're at home?" Chapter 397. Zhou put down her wine cup and asked Li Mu calmly, "Is your wife back?" Li Mu nodded and said, "They're at home now." Zhou said calmly, "Then let's go back." As soon as she said this, the scenery before Li Mu, Xiaobai, and Wanwan changed. When they appeared again, they were already in the courtyard of the Li residence. Lu Hanyan looked at the 3 people who suddenly appeared and asked, "What's the matter with you guys?" Li Mu said awkwardly, We were in the palace just now." Lu Hanyan frowned and asked, "What were you doing in the palace on New Year's Eve?" Li Mu explained, "Didn't you say that you guys weren't coming back? Only Wanwan, Xiaobai, and I were left at home? Only Her Majesty was in the palace. We thought that we could have dinner together tonight and have each other's company." Lu Hanyan looked at Wanwan and Xiaobai and asked, "Is that so?" Xiaobai and Wanwan nodded repeatedly. Lu Hanyan walked to the stone table in the courtyard and reached out her finger to gently wipe it. Looking at the dust on her hand, she asked Li Mu, "You guys have been eating this meal for at least half a month, right?" Li Mu said, "Let me explain first. If the imperial court was a company and the empress was the boss, Li Mu would be the employee that the boss valued the most. As a boss who cared about her employees, she understood that Li Mu had to travel a long way to and from work, so she let him stay near the company in her own villa. Wasn't this normal? On New Year's Eve, his wife was at home. The boss was touched that he had worked overtime day and night, so it wasn't too much to treat him to a New Year's Eve dinner, right?" Lu Hanyan looked at Li Mu and asked, "So for the past half a month, the 3 of you have been living in the palace?" Li Mu nodded. Lu Hanyan didn't make trouble for Li Mu, but Wanwan was called to her room. Li Mu didn't dare to follow her. He glanced at Li Qing, and Li Qing gave him a helpless look. Obviously, she was now on the same side as Lu Hanyan. Inside the room, Lu Hanyan tapped Wanwan's forehead and said, "What did I tell you before I left? I told you to keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't come back at night. But you guys are good. You just don't come back with him. Wanwan lowered her head and looked at her feet. She sobbed a few times and tears dripped down her face. This made Lu Hanyan at a loss. She said in a panic. Why are you crying? I haven't said anything yet. Wanwan wiped her tears and said in a muffled voice. There were so many dishes. I haven't eaten a single bite yet. Lu Hanyan didn't hear what she said clearly. Seeing that she was crying sadly, she could only hug her and comfort her. Okay, I don't blame you. Don't cry. Fortunately, Li Mu didn't sleep in the palace alone. He had Wanwan and Xiaobai to accompany him. He didn't do anything to let her down. At most, there was a little more dust in the house. But to clean it up was just a small spell. Now Li Mu was facing a very serious problem. He made the decision to have New Year's Eve dinner at Chang'e Palace after learning that Lu Hanyan and Li Qing wouldn't come back tonight. So he didn't buy vegetables in advance. After all, if they were in the palace, he wouldn't have to worry about these things at all. So what were they eating now? It was New Year's Eve. Every family was eating reunion dinner in the middle of the night. Even if they went out to buy vegetables, it would be too late. It was a pity that they hadn't even touched a single bite of the sumptuous meal on the table in Chang'e Palace. Little White was slightly better off, but Wanwan was on the verge of tears. When the Empress had moved her home, her chopsticks were still in her hand. There was only one way to have a normal New Year's Eve. Chang'e Palace. Zhou Yi sat on the roof of Chang'e Palace. She didn't touch the New Year's Eve dinner that the imperial kitchen had prepared with great care. The snow had stopped, but after Li Mu and the others left Chang'e Palace, it started to fall again. Moreover, it seemed to be falling more and more heavily. Zhou Yi allowed the snow to fall on her body. She silently looked at the lights of Shendu on New Year's Eve. It was the busiest night in Shendu, but Chang'e Palace was as cold and cheerless as usual. This was the liveliness of the common people. It had nothing to do with her. At a certain moment, she felt the spirit snail in the flask space vibrate. Zhou Yi stretched out her hand. The spirit snail floated in her palm. She looked at it for a while and put it away, ignoring it. A moment later, she took it out again and asked, "Why are you looking for me again?" Wanwan's aggrieved voice came from the spirit snail. "Sister Zhou, there's so much food. Can you finish it all by yourself?" Although Lu Hanyan often complained that the Empress was too harsh on Li Mu, when she really saw the Empress, she kept her head down. She didn't even dare to look at her. She didn't have the arrogance she had in front of Li Mu. In the hearts of the women of the Great Zhou, the Empress was like a god. It wasn't just the women of the Great Zhou. In the countries of Zhu Province, no matter if they were human, ghost, or demon, as long as they were female, they all admired the Empress. She was less than 30 years old, but she was sitting in the most powerful empire in Zhu Province. Her strength had also reached the upper three realms that cultivators dreamed of. She was the first person in history. This number one person included the man. People who weren't familiar with her were easily intimidated by her noble and powerful aura. Lu Hanyan was one of them. In Chang'e Palace, she even spoke much less than usual. Fortunately, with Wanwan and Xiaobai, especially Wanwan, the atmosphere of this special New Year's Eve dinner didn't seem so awkward. The people of the Great Zhou had the custom of enduring the new year. Tonight they generally didn't sleep. They had to tidy up when they got home. So Li Mu and the others simply stayed in Chang'e Palace. In order to make it easier to get through the long night, Li Mu used more than 100 pieces of spirit jade to carve a set of mahjong tiles. Of course, no one present was an ordinary person. For the sake of fairness, no one, including the Empress, was allowed to use magic to cheat. Except for the silly girl Wanwan, which one of the women in Chang'e Palace tonight wasn't intelligent and quickly learned how to play. Thus, Chang'e Palace was filled with the sound of playing mahjong for the entire night. Li Mu, Lu Hanyan, Li Qing, and the Empress sat at a square table. Xiaobai moved a chair and sat behind Li Mu. Wanwan ran over to take a look and quickly ran back to the table to eat a few mouthfuls. The night passed quickly. On the morning of the first day of the new year, after eating dumplings, Lu Hanyan and Li Qing were about to return. This time their return to Chengdu was a last-minute decision. Yu Zhenzi was still waiting for Lu Hanyan at Mount Baiyun. Li Qing also had to go back to continue her seclusion, and strive to break through to the fifth realm as soon as possible. Li Mu asked the Dao Bell to escort them back. When they reached Mount Baiyun, it flew back by itself. On the morning of the first day of the new year, Li Mu and the Empress didn't idle around. Every year on the first day of the new year, there was a court assembly as usual. In addition to the officials of Chengdu, the governors of the 36 counties also had to enter the palace on this day to report on their work. In addition, the Ministry of Rites also had to take the lead to hold the first ceremony of the new year. When all the procedures were completed, it was almost night. Next was a long holiday. From the first day of the first month to the 15th day of the new year, except for important government offices like the Ministry of Justice that needed officials to be on duty, most officials could enjoy half a month of holiday. Li Mu originally planned to take advantage of this holiday to return to Mount Baiyun. However, Li Qing was in seclusion, and Lu Hanyan was about to travel with Yizhenzi. After he returned to Mount Baiyun, there was a high possibility that he would be treated as a heartless talisman-drawing machine by those old guys. After careful consideration, Li Mu dispelled this idea. Instead of being squeezed dry by those old guys, he would rather stay in Chengdu and be squeezed dry by the Empress. However, the Empress hadn't squeezed him dry recently. The government offices weren't open, and there were no reports to read. Li Mu's daily life was nothing more than playing mahjong, cultivating, and repairing the Dao Bell. The cracks on the Dao Bell were almost invisible to the naked eye, but if the bell grew larger, the cracks would still be very obvious. At present, Li Mu could use it as an offensive Dharma artifact, and it could also protect Li Mu. If he wanted to restore it to its original state, and have the power to protect a mountain gate, he would have to wait for it to be completely repaired. However, Li Mu didn't have any new Dharma arts in his mind. Without Dharma arts that hadn't appeared in this world, he wouldn't be able to obtain the origin energy of heaven and earth. Li Mu didn't know of any other methods to obtain the origin energy of heaven and earth. He could only put this matter aside for the time being, and leave the Dao Bell by his side for the time being. Even if he didn't have any new Dharma arts, the Dao Bell would be able to repair itself within 10 years. Li Mu walked out of Changle Palace, patted the Dao Bell on his shoulder, and said, "You can only stay by my side for a while longer." The Dao Bell buzzed in response. Li Mu suddenly looked ahead, and saw a figure slowly walking toward Changle Palace. Judging from the figure, it seemed to be a woman. She was wearing a black cloak and a black bamboo hat, and her aura was obscure as she walked slowly to the entrance of Changle Palace. She looked at Li Mu, who was standing at the entrance of Changle Palace, and asked, "What's your name?" Li Mu sized her up and said, "Li Mu." The woman in black nodded slightly, and then asked, "Little Li, is Her Majesty in Changle Palace?" Chapter 398. Changle Palace. Li Mu already knew the identity of the woman in black. She was the commander of the Chrysanthemum Guards, the Orchid, Bamboo and Chrysanthemum Guards. Li Mu had never seen her before. According to the title of Commander of the Internal Guards, Li Mu should call her Lady Chrysanthemum. The Chrysanthemum Guards were the Empress's external intelligence organization. They were responsible for monitoring the movements of the Ghost Realm, the Demon Nation, the Demon Sect, and other powerful enemies of the Great Zhou. It was said that many of the Chrysanthemum Guards had infiltrated these forces, and were important spies for the imperial court. Zhou looked at the woman in black and asked, "You suddenly returned to Chengdu. Did the Demon Sect make a big move?" The woman in black glanced at Li Mu and said to Zhou, "Your Majesty, this is a matter of great importance. If it is not handled well, it will be a catastrophe for the Great Zhou and even the entire righteous path." Zhou understood her meaning and said, "He is one of us. If you can tell me something, you can also tell him." The woman in black didn't expect the Empress to trust a man so much, but she didn't dare to question the Empress. She looked away from Li Mu and said, "Your Majesty, the Demon Sect found the Demon Emperor White Emperor's cave." The Empress, who had always been indifferent, showed a serious expression when she heard this news. She asked, "Is the news true?" The woman in black nodded and said, "One of my spies risked exposing his identity to spread this news. The Demon Sect has been searching for the White Emperor's cave for hundreds of years. Recently, They made a major breakthrough and confirmed the approximate location of the White Emperor's cave. What demon emperor, White Emperor? Li Mu was confused and couldn't help but ask, Your Majesty, who is Demon Emperor White Emperor? What happened to his cave? The woman in black looked at Li Mu and frowned. Which commander do you work for? How can you be so unruly? Is this a place where you can interrupt? Li Mu pursed his lips. If it wasn't for the Empress's serious expression, he wouldn't have interrupted even if she asked him to. He said to the Empress, Your Majesty, Lady Chrysanthemum, and you have important matters to discuss. I will leave first. Zhou said, Come back. Li Mu. This is not the place for this subject to interrupt. This subject should leave first. Stop fooling around. Zhou rubbed her eyebrows helplessly. She looked at the woman in black and said, When you see him in the future, treat him like you see me. Don't say those words again. The woman in black stared blankly at Li Mu. The shock in her heart could not be any greater. Had His Majesty's trust in this person reached such a level? After regaining her senses, she lowered her head and said in a deep voice, Yes. Zhou looked at Li Mu again and explained. Demon Emperor Bai Di was a powerful demon 3,000 years ago. His cultivation had reached the 9th realm. Today, most of the major demon clans' orthodoxies were passed down from him. Thus, he was respectfully called Demon Emperor by the demon clans. Although the Demon Emperor passed down the demon orthodoxies, he had no direct disciples. His lifespan ended, and after he died, no one inherited his cave abode. Bai Di, Demon Emperor, powerful demon. Li Mu still could not imagine how powerful he was with such words. It was only when the Empress mentioned the 9th realm that Li Mu realized that this demon was actually so powerful. In Li Mu's eyes, the 7th realm was already very powerful. The Empress could teleport, plant flowers, and even chase him into his dreams to beat him up. These were only the abilities of the 7th realm. How powerful would the legendary 9th realm be? But when he thought about how even someone as powerful as the 9th realm only had a lifespan of 300 years, Li Mu felt that it was not that interesting anymore. Powerful cultivators who could reverse yin and yang and mediate destiny would be embarrassed to tell others that they were immortal cultivators if they did not live for thousands of years. They had painstakingly cultivated to the 9th realm, but they had only lived less than 200 years longer than normal people. Moreover, the 300 years of their lives had been spent in boring cultivation. What was the point of cultivating here and there? The Empress continued. It is said that in the Demon Emperor Bai Di's cave abode, there are many magic treasures and spirit herbs. Li Mu said in surprise. No matter how good the quality of those magic treasures and spirit herbs are, after 3,000 years, they will lose all their spiritual qi and become ordinary objects, right? The Empress nodded and said. The magic treasures will be damaged, and the spirit herbs will lose their effectiveness. But even after 3,000 years, the Tao page will not change at all. Li Mu was shocked and said, There is a Tao page in the Demon Emperor Bai Di's cave abode? The Empress said. This was not a secret at the time. It was because he comprehended part of the Tao page that he was able to pass down the teachings of the demon race. Later people guessed that the Tao page he had recorded the cultivation methods of the demon race in the world. In the current cultivation world, if there was any treasure that was the most precious, it would undoubtedly be the Tao page. Obtaining a Tao page would allow one to establish a sect and pass down their teachings. The 6 sects of Taoism, and the various sects of the demon path, all inherited their teachings from the Tao page. Over the past 10,000 years, even though the factions had been improving and innovating on the basis of the Tao pages and had made great progress, they had to admit that the cultivation world had only developed for a short period of time. It was still a long way from reaching the peak of the previous era. The scene Li Mu saw from the Fulu School's Tao page had already proved this point. The cultivation of this era was temporarily behind the previous era. The Tao page was at least an item from the previous era. In other words, obtaining the Tao page would allow one to obtain an even more powerful inheritance. He finally understood why Lady Ju and the Empress were so nervous. If this Tao page was obtained by the righteous path, it would be fine. But if it was obtained by the demon path's demon sect, it would be disastrous. The demon path's demon sect was different from ordinary demons. Among the demons, There were good and kind demons like Xiaobai, Bai Yinxin and Bai Tingxin. But there were also evil demons that fed on the essence and blood of humans. The Demon Path's demon sect was established by these fallen demons. If the Demon Path's demon sect obtained this Tao page, and comprehended an even more powerful demon art from it, it would be a huge blow to the Great Zhou and the Righteous Path. The demon race originally had an innate advantage. If they obtained a more complete and higher-level cultivation method, they might be able to create a force that was not weaker than the 6 sects of Taoism within a few years. The black-clothed woman said solemnly, "Your Majesty, we must prevent the demon sect from obtaining the Tao page. Otherwise, it will lead to a disaster." Zhou nodded and said, "I understand. This Tao page must not fall into the hands of the demon path." Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "Your Majesty, why don't we let the 3 consecrators of the consecration department go? With their strength, it won't be a problem for them to sweep through the demon path's demon sect and obtain the Tao page." Zhou shook his head and said, "They won't be able to enter Demon Emperor White Emperor's cave abode." Li Mu was puzzled. "Why?" Zhou explained. "The reason why his cave abode has not been discovered for so many years is because this cave abode is a flask space that he created himself. An ownerless flask space is unstable. If cultivators above the 6th realm enter, the cave abode will immediately collapse. All living beings in the cave abode will be wiped out by the power of space." Li Mu was stunned. In other words, cultivators above the 6th realm could not enter White Emperor's cave abode at all? Without 6th realm cultivators, what was there to be afraid of? Li Mu looked at the Empress confidently and said, "Don't worry, Your Majesty. I will definitely bring that Tao page back." The woman in black looked at the Empress and said in shock, "Your Majesty." The Empress nodded and said, "Let one of the high consecrators accompany you. If anything happens, he can take care of you." The woman in black was confused. 6th realm cultivators could not enter White Emperor's cave abode. In order to prevent the Tao page from falling into the hands of the demon path, shouldn't the imperial court send all the high consecrators below the 6th realm? Hearing Her Majesty's words, it seemed like she planned to let this person go alone. She had been undercover in the Yao nation for a year. After returning to the divine capital, she realized that her thoughts could not keep up with Her Majesty's. No, she had to ask Shangguanli what was going on. Not long after, at the entrance of Chang'e Palace, Shangguanli nodded and said, "If he goes personally, you don't have to worry." The woman in black scratched her head and said in disbelief, "Who is he? Why do you and Her Majesty trust him so much?" In Chang'e Palace, Li Mu was still thinking. For a moment, he wanted to go to White Emperor's cave abode alone and take back that Tao page. However, after thinking about it carefully, that was still a bit reckless. Although he was confident in his own strength, he had to be careful on the path of cultivation. He could not underestimate others. If he failed miserably, he would die without even a chance to regret it. Moreover, the Yao sect had planned this for hundreds of years. If they did not send out all their elites for this operation, he might not be able to handle it alone. His beautiful life had just begun. Thinking of Lu Hanyan, Li Qing, Wan, Xiaobai the Empress, he decided to play it safe. This time, he planned to bring all the high consecrators at the peak of the 5th realm with him. In addition, he also wanted to borrow some people from Fulu School to ensure that nothing went wrong. Li Mu took out a sound transmission talisman. After Lu Hanyan went to White Cloud Mountain, she would probably return this talisman to Xianjizi. He did not know what Xianjizi was busy with. Li Mu urged the talisman several times, but there was no response. White Cloud Mountain, main peak Taoist Palace. 6 tall white jade chairs floated in the void. Fulu School's headmaster, Xianjizi, sat in the main seat. The other 5 chairs were occupied by 4 men and 1 woman. They were all phantoms. The only middle-aged woman said, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist Xianjizi. You have gained a beloved disciple. I will prepare a generous gift for the disciple acceptance ceremony." A middle-aged man beside her said, "I also want to congratulate fellow Taoist Yuzenzi for ascending to transcendence. Fulu School has gained another powerhouse." Xianjizi cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoists." Then, as if he sensed something, he said to the crowd, "Please wait for a moment." He stretched out his hand. A white light flashed in his palm, and a wooden box appeared. Xianjizi inserted his magic power and asked briefly, "Junior brother, what's the matter?" In Changle Palace, Li Mu contacted Xianjizi several times, but there was no response. Just as he was about to give up, Xianjizi's voice finally came from the wooden box. Li Mu cleared his throat and said, "There is a very important matter. This matter concerns the foundation of Fulu School. The Imperial Court has received accurate news that the Demon Path's monster sect has discovered Monster Emperor White Emperor's cave abode. There is a Dao page in the cave abode. I have to get it and not let the Demon Path get it. Senior brother, remember to send a few peak manifestation realm elders over. Remember not to tell anyone about this. Monster Emperor White Emperor. Leave behind the cave abode. The Dao page." In the Dao Palace, the phantoms of the other 5 headmasters were stunned. Xianjizi was extremely regretful. The matter of the Dao page was extremely important. He should have waited for these people's phantoms to dissipate before contacting Li Mu. In Changle Palace, Li Mu saw that Xianjizi did not speak and frowned. "Senior brother, this is a great opportunity to realize your dream of revitalizing Fulu School. Can you punch the South Sect, kick the North Sect, lead Xuanzong, make the Pill Cauldron and Spirit Array sects submit to you and become the head of the 6 Taoist sects? It all depends on this. Senior brother, say something." There was suddenly no sound from the voice transmission box. Li Mu turned it over and looked at it. He was puzzled. Strange, why is there no sound? Is there no signal here? In the Dao Palace of the main peak of Baiyun Mountain, Xianjizi looked at the unfriendly gazes of the 5 people, and an awkward expression appeared on his face. "Fellow Taoist Xianjizi, you really are a good headmaster of Fulu School. Fellow Taoist, you have big dreams." The other 5 headmasters looked at Xianjizi and mocked him. Xianjizi looked at them and suddenly waved his sleeves. A spiritual energy storm swept out, and the 5 primordial spirit phantoms were instantly blown away. Then Xianjizi stood up and said in a low voice, "All 5th realm elders of the various peaks, come to the Dao Palace of the main peak to see me." His voice soon echoed throughout the entire White Cloud Mountain. Chapter 399. The sect master urgently summoned all the 5th realm elders. This was the first time such a thing had happened on Baiyun Mountain. For a moment, all the creation realm elders in the sect, whether they were writing talismans or cultivating in seclusion, immediately stopped what they were doing and left the various peaks to head to the main peak. At the same time, above the East Sea, in the Xuanzong Ancestral Court, there were dozens of streams of light flying towards the highest peak from several mountains that were hanging upside down in the air. In a certain country in the southwest of the ancestral state, in the ancestral court of the Pill Cauldron sect, all the creation realm elders in the sect had just been urgently summoned by the sect master. The South Sect, North Sect, and Spirit Array sect also did the same. For these 5 sects, Xianjizi's dream was not worth mentioning. Which of the 6 Taoist sects did not want to unify Taoism? Everyone was polite on the surface, but in reality, everyone wanted to ride on the heads of others. In comparison, the Dao page that the Demon Emperor by D once possessed was the most important thing. Although what was recorded on that page might only be the cultivation methods of the Demon Clan, all methods were one, and the Great Path was the same. Human cultivators might be able to comprehend something from it. Taking a step back, even if the Dao page was useless to human cultivators, it was a supreme treasure to the demon race. It could even be said that whoever obtained the Dao page would obtain the demon race. Even if they could not obtain it, they could not let the demon path obtain it. Changle Palace. Li Mu and Xianjizi were speechless for a long time after their second conversation. He originally wanted Xianjizi to keep it a secret. Now all the 6 Taoist sects knew that the Demon Path and the Demon Path had found clues to the White Emperor cave abode. These sects would definitely not stand by and watch. The competition suddenly increased by many times. Xianjizi was old and the sect master. Li Mu had to give him some face and did not say anything. Although it was best for their own people to obtain the Dao page, it was more important that it did not fall into the hands of the Demon Path. If the 6 Taoist sects sent people to participate, the chances of snatching the Dao page from the demon path would be higher. There was no time to lose. In order to prevent the demon path from taking the initiative, Li Mu had to act immediately. Unfortunately, it was the Lantern Festival in 2 days. He had promised to accompany Xiao Bai and Wanwan to the Lantern Festival, but now he had to break his promise. After making this decision as quickly as possible, Li Mu left the palace gates and strode toward the Department of Offerings. Life Continent, Country of Demons. In the 100,000 mountain range, the demons had their own territories. Every great demon had their own territory. Within their territories, they established their own kingdoms and called themselves kings. They recruited the demons and formed a powerful force. These forces had friction with each other, and occasionally there would be annexation. Only those forces that were strong enough to intimidate others could survive for a long time. For example, the demon sect. The demon sect was not a country established by a certain demon race, and most of the members of the demon sect were not from the demon nation. Many of them had fled to the 100,000 mountain range after committing heinous crimes by feeding on human blood essence in the various countries in the ancestral state. The demon sect gathered these fallen demons together and formed a huge force. Even the top-ranked demon kings of the demon nation would not provoke them. This was because the demon sect was not only a single force, but also one of the 10 demon path sections. They had the support of the demon path behind them, allowing them to occupy a vast territory in the demon nation. The demon sect. Numerous mountain peaks were scattered all over the place. Each mountain peak was filled with dense demonic qi. Among them, demonic qi soared into the sky from several of the mountain peaks, piercing through the clouds. On the highest mountain peak, the pressure was extremely strong. Some of the lesser demons passing by would involuntarily lower their heads and feel panic in their hearts. On that mountain peak was the cave residence of the Grand Elder. The demon sect's Grand Elder was a late-stage core fragmentation expert. His strength was equivalent to a peak human cultivator in Dongxian. He was only one step away from stepping into the 7th realm and becoming a legendary spirit demon. On the mountain peak in the most spacious cave residence, a strong man was sitting on a tall chair. His voice was as loud as a bell as he asked, "How is it?" Another figure knelt down and said, "Great Elder, we are 100% sure that the Demon King's cave is there. However, the Demon King has passed away and no one knows where the entrance to the space is. It will take some time to find the entrance to the cave." The strong man said in a deep voice, "Take your time. We have waited for hundreds of years. There is no need to rush." The figure kneeling on the ground said, "Grand Elder, why don't you look for it yourself? With your strength, it shouldn't be difficult to find the entrance to the Demon King's cave residence, right?" The strong man looked at him indifferently and said, "What do you know? If I leave here, I will definitely attract the attention of some old fellows. Don't forget where this place is. Once the news is leaked, the entire demon nation will be shaken. At that time, it will be even harder for us to get that thing." The figure immediately said, "It's my men who are stupid." The strong man asked, "How is the lockdown?" The figure nodded and said, "Don't worry, Grand Elder. The people who know about this are all our trusted men. I guarantee that it will be airtight. As long as we find the entrance to the cave residence, we will be able to quietly get that thing. At that time, Grand Elder will unify the demon nation and become the king of demons. It will only be a matter of time." The strong man nodded and said, "It's fine as long as it's airtight." Just as he finished speaking, someone suddenly walked in quickly and said, "Grand Elder, His Highness King Qingguang is here to visit." The strong man frowned and asked suspiciously, "What is he here for?" This was a sensitive time when he was about to succeed. Any movement would make him suspicious. He would suspect that the other party was here for his White Emperor's cave residence. Soon, the strong man shook his head. He must be thinking too much. King Qingguang was far away in the ghost realm. How could he know his secret? He looked at the person and said, "Let him in." Ever since the Nether Saint died at the hands of the Empress of the Great Zhou, the Soul Sect had no leader. In order to stabilize the Soul Sect, several elders of the Sage Sect worked together to raise King Qingguang's strength to the 6th realm, and promoted him to the new Grand Elder of the Soul Sect. In terms of status, This former junior of the Soul Sect was now on equal footing with him. Soon the black-robed King Qingguang walked into the cave residence. He first cupped his hands to the strong man and said, "Greetings, Demon King." Although he was now the Grand Elder of the Soul Sect, the strength of the demon race and the Soul Sect could not be mentioned in the same breath. He was far from being a match for the Grand Elder of the Demon Sect. In front of him, King Qingguang still lowered his status slightly. The Demon Sect's Grand Elder Taoist priest said, "I haven't congratulated you on being promoted to the Grand Elder of the Soul Sect." King Qingguang said modestly, "It's all luck. I can't compare to the Demon King." The two exchanged a few polite words. The Demon Sect's Grand Elder asked, "Why did you come to my demon nation instead of staying in the ghost realm?" King Qingguang said, "I heard that the Demon King discovered the White Emperor's cave residence, so I came to take a look." Boom. The Demon Sect's Grand Elder's mind buzzed. He had already ordered everyone to keep this matter a secret. The entire matter was airtight. How did King Qingguang, who was far away in the ghost realm, know about it? Soon his face regained its calm. He looked at King Qingguang and said in surprise, "Even I didn't know about this. How did you know about it?" King Qingguang looked at him with surprise and said slowly, "Ahead of the Pill Cauldron School and a dozen Fortune Realm elders have already entered the Demon Nation. According to the reports of our spies in various places, besides the Pill Cauldron School, the Fulu School, the Spirit Array School, the Southern School, the Northern School, and the Xuanzong have all made big movements. Their target seems to be the Demon Nation. The Great Zhou's consecrated department has been moving frequently recently. There must be some scheme. If they're not here for the White Emperor's cave residence, could it be that they're here to pacify the Demon Nation and eradicate the Demon Sect?" The Demon Sect's Grand Elder's face sank. After a long time, he took a deep breath and looked at a figure behind him. He gritted his teeth and said, "This is what you meant by airtight." The demon cultivator fell to his knees with a thump, his body shaking like a sieve. How was this airtight? It was simply leaking air everywhere. At this moment, he also didn't know how this matter that was supposed to be top secret was suddenly known by everyone. Could it be that there was a traitor among them? P.S. This chapter is a little short. The reason is that I haven't finished writing the following plot. There are many ideas, but it's not easy to string them together and make them interesting. If the second update isn't up by 11:30, then it isn't. I'll update when the ideas are smoothed out. Chapter 400. Inside the cave, King Qingguang looked at the Demon Sect Grand Elder and said, "Demon King, this time, the 6 Taoist sects and the Great Zhou Court have all sent experts to the Demon Nation. We must determine the purpose of these people. If they really want to eradicate the Demon Sect and pacify the Demon Nation, we must immediately report back to the Sage Sect and ask the elders to decide." The Demon Sect Grand Elder snorted and asked, "Do they have the guts?" Whether it was the Righteous Tao, the Demon Tao, or the Great Zhou Court, there was a certain tacit understanding between the three. The Great Zhou Court would never join forces with the 6 Taoist sects to attack a branch of the Demon Tao, unless they were prepared for the crazy revenge of the 10 Demon Tao sects. At that time, the entire ancestral province would become a battlefield. The battle between super experts could render the 36 counties of the Great Zhou barren. If the Great Zhou Court lost, their nation would be destroyed. If the Great Zhou Court won, the 36 counties would become a land of death. The Demon Tao might lose, but the Righteous Tao and the Great Zhou Court would never win. They were not here to attack the Demon Sect. Without a doubt, their purpose in coming to the Demon Nation was the White Emperor's cave. King Qingguang looked at him and said, "So the matter of the White Emperor's cave is true?" At this point, there was no use in hiding it. The Demon Sect Grand Elder said with a sullen face, "It's true." As his voice fell, another small demon ran in and said, "Grand Elder, the Sage Sect Elder sent a message." The news of the Demon Sect discovering the Demon Emperor White Emperor's cave quickly spread throughout the various demon nations. The Demon Sect discovered the location of the White Emperor's cave. They sent people into the White Emperor's cave. The Demon Sect Grand Elder obtained that page of the Heavenly Book. The Demon Sect Grand Elder comprehended the Heavenly Book and is about to unify the demon nation. At first, the demons thought that the news was fake. However, as the rumors became more and more true, some powerful demons could not sit still. Black Wind Nation. A burly man with a face full of black hair and a pair of large ears had a glint in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "No, we can't let the demon sect obtain this page of the heavenly book. Otherwise, they will cause chaos in our demon kingdom. Send someone to find out what's going on." In a certain mountain range in the demon nation, there was a mountain peak that resembled a wolf's head. At the mouth of the wolf, there was a deep cave. It was pitch black inside the cave, with only a few balls of flame flickering. Only when he got closer did he realize that these were not ghostly flames at all, but pairs of ghostly green eyes. A gray wolf ran into the cave from the outside. Soon, a conversation could be heard from inside the cave. The demon race's heavenly tomes cannot fall into the hands of outsiders. Third brother is right. No matter if it's the humans or the demon sect, we cannot let them obtain the demon emperor's heavenly book. With our strength, I'm afraid we're no match for the Taoist sect, the diabolical sect, and the Great Zhou court. Let's discuss this with that snake and that big cat. This time, we have to work together. In the demon nation, above the lush mountain range, several figures flew past at high speed. Other than the two high reverends of the worship department and the sloppy Taoist priest, there were 5 reverends at the peak of the manifestation realm beside Li Mu. For the sake of this plan, all the elites of the worship department had been mobilized. Among them, the 5 reverends at the peak of the 5th realm had entered the White Emperor's cave abode with Li Mu. The sloppy Taoist priest and the 2 high reverends were there to protect their safety. The demon nation was not the Great Zhou. There were countless great demons in it. And it was also the lair of the diabolical sect and the demon sect. Danger lurked in every corner. Whether or not they could obtain the treasure was one matter. And whether or not they could leave this place safely after obtaining the treasure was another matter. Within the demon nation, there were many towering mountains and steep ridges, and very few plains. As he flew over, Li Mu could feel the soaring demon chi from many of the mountain peaks. Among them, there were many 4th and 5th realm demons. There were even 1 or 2 6th realm demons. In the Great Zhou, 5th realm demons could be called demon kings, and 6th realm demons could be called demon emperors. But here, only 6th realm great demons could be called demon kings. As for demon emperors, it was an honorific that belonged to only one person. Demon Emperor Bai Di was a powerful demon from 3,000 years ago. Before Bai Di, most demons did not know how to cultivate. They relied on their instincts to breathe in spirit chi. Although it was not difficult for such a primitive cultivation method to give birth to spiritual intelligence, it was extremely difficult for powerful cultivators to appear. Bai Di was the first 9th realm great demon. Not only was his own cultivation extraordinary, but he also passed down cultivation methods to many demons. After Bai Di, the demons obtained cultivation methods and began to rise rapidly. They even established the demon nation and ruled separately from the human race until now. It was said that Bai Di only passed down the basic cultivation methods of the demons. The true great supernatural power of the demons still existed in the heavenly book in Bai Di's hands. As long as one could obtain the heavenly book, they would be able to grasp the supreme cultivation secrets of the demons. The Tao scripture of the Taoist sect was called the heavenly book by the demons. Others might have other names, but in the eyes of the Taoist sect, no matter if it was the demon Tao, the ghost Tao, the demon Tao, or the Buddhist Tao, they were all Taos. There was nothing wrong with calling it the Tao scripture. Li Mu and the others swaggered across the sky, encountering quite a number of demons blocking their way. However, when they saw the formation of the group, they fled far away without even thinking about it. Later, Li Mu simply asked the 2 high priests to release their auras. Since then, no more demons dared to jump out. Although they were few in number, only 9, these 9 people could destroy most of the demon nations here. Li Mu took out a compass and looked at the needle on the compass. It pointed to a mountain peak on the left and said, "There." The group flew another 50 miles to the left and landed on a mountain peak. On the open space on the mountain peak, Hian Jinko walked over with a smile and said, "Junior brother, you're finally here." The few figures behind him also walked forward and bowed. Greetings, Martial Uncle Ling Jizi. Mount Baiyun was closer to the demon nation, so the people from Fulu School had arrived earlier than Li Mu. However, they did not know the exact location, and could only wait for Li Mu to arrive first. No need for formalities. Li Mu waved at the elders and looked to the side, saying, Daoist Miao Dun is also here. Hyun Jinko revealed a helpless expression. Although the other 5 sects knew about the White Emperor's cave abode, only Li Mu knew its exact location. Even if they arrived at the demon nation, they could only look around like headless flies. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect to meet people from the profound sect here. After Xuanzong's Miao Dun saw them, she insisted on traveling with them. He could not shake her off no matter how hard he tried. In the end, he could only give up. A middle-aged Taoist nun holding a horsetail whisk walked over and smiled at Li Mu, saying, Long time no see. Fellow Taoist, you're not the same as before. When she first met Li Mu, he was still a lowly constable in Yangqiu County with a weak cultivation. After more than a year, he had already advanced to the fortune realm and became a second-generation disciple of Fulu School. His status was the same as hers. Li Mu smiled and said, Taoist Miao Dun is still as elegant as ever. The middle-aged Taoist nun smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, you're also looking for the White Emperor's cave abode, right? Why don't we go together? There was only one Dao page. One more person meant one more competitor. However, Taoist Miao Dun had done a lot to kill Qianhuan. Now that she had taken the initiative to ask, Li Mu could not refuse. He nodded and said, That's good. Taoist Miao Dun glanced at Hyun Jinko and said, Your junior brother is much stronger than you. Hyun Jinko shook his head and said, Since junior brother says so, let's go. After all, Li Mu was still the main person in charge of this matter. Xuanzong and Fulu School, although one was in the east and the other in the north, they were both in the Great Zhou. Their relationship was closer than the other sects, so he could not keep refusing. Li Mu was convinced by Zhu Wei's ability to gather information. Apart from bringing news of the White Emperor's cave abode, she also gave Li Mu the specific location. After meeting up with Hyun Jinko and the others, the group of nearly 20 people quickly flew towards the heart of the Yao Kingdom. 2 hours later, the group arrived in the sky above a valley. The slovenly Taoist priest suddenly said, Stop. The next moment he rolled up his sleeves and said, Retreat. Almost instantly, the 2 high priests, Hyun Jinko and Miao Dun, reacted. They each took a few people and retreated out of the valley. Several powerful attacks came from all directions of the valley. The space where Li Mu and the others were just now fluctuated violently. Just the aftermath alone was enough to flatten the surrounding mountains. If Li Mu and the others were still in their original positions, the high priests and the fifth realm elders of Fulu School and Xuanzong would probably be instantly destroyed. The Dongxian experts would also be seriously injured. The next moment, 4 powerful auras rose from the valley. One of them was emitting a ghostly aura. He was slightly weaker than the Nether Saint, but he was still a 6th realm expert. The other person was a muscular man. His demonic aura soared into the sky. His aura was also very terrifying. Li Mu sensed that he seemed to be even stronger than Hyun Jinko. As for the other 2, one was an unusually handsome man. The other was shrouded in a cloud of fog. His face could not be seen, but from their auras, these 2 were undoubtedly 6th realm experts. Hyun Jinko looked at the muscular man with a serious expression. He said, Demon Sect Grand Elder. The man looked at the group with a fierce gaze. His voice was loud as a bell. He said sternly, This is not a place where you can come. Go back to where you came from. The slovenly Taoist priest crossed his arms and said disdainfully, Little cat, what are you being so arrogant for? There are only 4 of you and 5 of us. Why don't we fight? Whoever loses can get lost. The 4 6th realms on the other side were undoubtedly from the Devil Sect. Judging from their characteristics, they should be from the Soul Sect, the Demon Sect, the Mirage Sect, and the Maison Sect respectively. It was obvious that the Devil Sect had attached great importance to the Demon Emperor's cave residence this time. While the 2 sides were in a stalemate, Li Mu suddenly felt a gaze from the opposite side fall on him. He looked across and saw a few figures standing behind the handsome man. One of them was a woman who was glaring at him with a ferocious look in her eyes. It was as if she wanted nothing more than to skin him alive. Chapter 401. Seeing Phantom Princess, Li Mu recalled the rope that the Empress had given him. Then he recalled some scenes that were not suitable for children. If it wasn't for that teleportation talisman, this demon would have become Li Mu's captive. Now, the 2 short swords that he had seized from her were still in Li Mu's storage space. Sensing Li Mu's unscrupulous gaze, Phantom Princess also recalled some past events, and the viciousness in her eyes intensified. Opposite him, the demon sect's Grand Elder looked at the 5 powerhouses opposite him with an ugly expression. Just as the Taoist priest had said, in terms of the number of powerhouses, his side was at a disadvantage. Not only that, he couldn't see through the Taoist priest's strength at all. Even if his cultivation hadn't reached the 7th realm, he should be at the edge of that realm. They didn't have the advantage in numbers, and their strength was also slightly inferior. They were at an absolute disadvantage. However, he wouldn't give up on the Demon Emperor's cave abode, and the things inside no matter what. Li Mu's side didn't retreat, and the demon sect's side didn't budge either. Just as both sides were in a deadlock, another 4 auras rapidly approached from afar. 4 demonic auras shot into the sky, and the demon sect's Grand Elder's expression darkened even more. The White Emperor's cave abode should have belonged to him alone, but some damn traitor leaked the news. Not only did it attract the attention of the Great Zhou Court and the 6 Taoist sects, but even the other great demons of the demon nation couldn't sit still. He looked at the 4 figures rapidly approaching and said coldly, "Snake King, Panther King, Bear King, Wolf King, what are you doing here?" Among the 4 figures that had just arrived, a slender man with a feminine face said, "The Demon Emperor is the Emperor of the demon race, not the Emperor of the tiger race. Does the Tiger King want to monopolize it?" The demon sect's Grand Elder's true form was a tiger demon. He looked at the Snake King and said coldly, "We have enough evidence to prove that the Demon Emperor's true form belongs to the tiger race. What does his cave abode have to do with you?" The Snake King said indifferently, "I still have proof. The Demon Emperor is an ancestor of my snake clan. His cave abode and everything in it should be inherited by us." Seeing that they were about to quarrel with the Demon Kings again, the handsome man from the demon sect said, "For demon kings, no matter what, the Demon Emperor's cave abode should belong to the demon race. It has nothing to do with humans. Why don't you join forces with the demon sect, and chase away those people from the Great Zhou Court and Dao sect? Then the demon race will decide who the cave abode belongs to." The 4 monster kings looked at each other, seemingly deep in thought. Li Mu frowned slightly. If the demon race and the demon sect joined forces, the number of 6th realm cultivators on the other side would immediately double. 8 against 5, they were at a disadvantage. Li Mu decisively looked at Hyun Jinko and asked, "Senior brother, can you contact the other 4 sects?" Hyun Jinko immediately understood what Li Mu meant. He took out a bronze mirror and said telepathically, "Jade Sun, 2 heaven-grade pills and I'll tell you the location of the White Thrarch cave abode." The other party did not hesitate for long and immediately said, "Deal." Hyun Jinko changed his hand seals and sent them into the bronze mirror. He said again, "Guanjiwanzi, 2 heaven-grade array flags and I'll tell you the location of the White Thrarch cave abode." The person in the mirror said in a low voice, "Deal." Hyun Jinko held the mirror in one hand and changed hand seals with the other. White light was sent into the mirror repeatedly. "Ling Wuzi, 100 bottles of spirit fluid and I'll tell you where the White Thrarch cave abode is. 50 bottles no less. If you don't agree, I'll look for Dong Yunzi. It's good that you agree. 50 bottles of spirit fluid in exchange for a chance to obtain the Dao page. You guys don't lose out. Dong Yunzi, 2 heaven-grade magic treasures in exchange for the location of the White Thrarch cave abode. Dan Qingzi and the rest have all agreed. You're the only one left. What? One. Come over quickly." Li Mu looked at Hyun Jinko in a daze. In his eyes, Hyun Jinko had always been an honest person with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Li Mu and Lu Hanyan had become disciples. He was the one who had been exploited the most by Yuzhen and Fu Daozi. He had been extorted of a lot of treasures, But he did not complain at all. He was so honest that it was embarrassing. He was completely not as shrewd as he was just now. Li Mu was dumbfounded when he heard the news and did 4 business deals. Sensing Li Mu's gaze, Hyun Jinko said embarrassedly, "It's almost time for Senior Brother Sect Master's disciple recruitment ceremony." "I understand." Li Mu nodded embarrassedly and said, I understand. First it was Lu Hanyan. Then it was Li Mu. The couple had already emptied Hyun Jinko. Until now, Li Mu was too embarrassed to take out the Qingxian sword in front of him. Now it was Li Qing's turn. He probably really did not have anything that he could take out. That was why he wanted to take this opportunity to extort a wave of money. By extorting 4 sects at the same time, other than giving Li Qing a meeting gift, he also made a lot of profit. Li Mu was truly somewhat guilty. Their family had forced an honest person to become a treacherous person. Opposite them, the eyes of the 4 demon kings flickered. Although the demon sect did not have good intentions, they definitely did not want the treasures of the demon race to be obtained by humans. Joining forces to chase them away first before fighting with the demon sect was the best decision. However, before they could respond, a sudden change occurred. The sky in front suddenly lit up. In the void, a golden door appeared out of nowhere. Several figures walked out of the door. The aura of the leader was obscure. He was obviously a 6th realm cultivator. The few people behind him also had the aura of a peak 5th realm cultivator. Li Mu looked at the golden door. From that position, he could feel the fluctuations of an array formation. They had directly built a teleportation array formation. The appearance of the spirit array sect was indeed extraordinary. Among the 4 sects, they were the first to arrive. Then a few more figures shot over from afar and arrived in an instant. A woman in a white robe and a few other figures appeared in everyone's line of sight. These people were all women. As they approached, Li Mu suddenly caught a whiff of a fragrant scent. This fragrance did not smell like the body fragrance of a woman. It was more like the fragrance of an elixir. Moreover, it was the fragrance of a supreme-grade elixir. Li Mu could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. For cultivators, this fragrance was really too alluring. Without a doubt, these people were the powerful cultivators of the Elixir Cauldron sect. Then a few more figures descended from the sky. These people were all men. They wore Taoist robes, but they did not look elegant at all. Because their bodies were too strong, Li Mu could see the lines of their muscles through the Taoist robes. The disciples of the South sect began to temper their bodies before they started cultivating. They specialized in the martial Tao. The strength of their bodies was comparable to Dharma treasures. The moment the disciples of the South sect appeared, Li Mu heard the sound of wind. He looked up and saw a black dot appear in the distant sky. The black dot enlarged quickly. A gigantic sword that was 1,000 feet long appeared in front of everyone's eyes. A few figures stood at the tip of the gigantic sword. After flying to the top of the valley, the people standing on the giant sword jumped down. Then, the gigantic sword began to shrink rapidly. In the end, it shrunk to its normal size, and was carried on the back of a middle-aged man with a cultivation of the 6th realm. Li Mu noticed that the Taoist robes of the people beside the middle-aged man were flowing with light. They seemed to be of extraordinary quality. The weapons in their hands also looked extraordinary. Looking at their outfits and then looking at the disciples of the Fulu school, it was like comparing an emperor to a beggar. The North sect specialized in refining weapons. Among the 6 Taoist sects, it was the most extravagant sect. At this point, the 6 Taoist sects had gathered. The middle-aged man from the North sect looked around and looked at Hyun Jinko. He said angrily, "Hyun Jinko, didn't you say that you would only tell us this news?" The muscular man from the South sect did not look good either. He said the same thing to me. The woman from the Pill Cauldron sect looked at Hyun Jinko unhappily. She said, "Senior brother Hyun Jinko, you said that you would only tell little sister. You didn't keep your word." From the Spirit Array sect, Guang Yuanzi snorted coldly. He said, "You didn't keep your word first. We can only give you 1 set of heaven-grade array flags." Hyun Jinko coughed softly and said, "Let's not rush this matter. Opening the Demon Emperor's cave abode and getting the Tao page is more important." Although everyone's expression was still somewhat displeased, They did not speak again. The six Taoist sects usually liked to fight for disciples and organize all kinds of competitions between disciples to see who was better. They also dreamed of one day riding on the heads of the other 5 sections. However, at the end of the day, they were still fellow sect members. Even if they were from different sects, they would still address each other as senior brother and senior sister. At this moment, they were united against the outside world. It was a tacit understanding that did not even need to be mentioned. Opposite them, the demon sect Grand Elder's expression was already indescribably ugly. The 6 Taoist sects and the Great Zhou court already had 9 sixth realm experts on their side. On their side, even if the 4 demon kings were all on their side, they only had 8 sixth realm experts. Not to mention, the actual combat strength of the first seat of the 6 Taoist sects could not be measured by experts of the same level. If they really fought, their side would undoubtedly suffer a crushing defeat. Originally, it was his treasure trove alone. Now it had attracted more than 10 major factions to fight for it. Just the 6th realm experts alone numbered 16. And that was not counting himself. At the thought of this, he hated the spy who leaked the news even more. However, the spy seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. No matter how he searched or calculated, he could not find any trace of the spy. After the people from the other 4 sects arrived, the atmosphere became awkward once more. Although the 6 Taoist sects and the Great Zhou court were the strongest among the factions, no matter whether they wanted to make a move against the demon sect or the 4 demon kings, the other factions would not stand by and watch. If they really fought, neither side would gain any advantage. The slovenly Taoist priest looked at the demon sect Grand Elder and asked, "Little Tabby Cat, what do you say now?" The demon sect Grand Elder remained silent. It was impossible for him to monopolize the demon emperor's cave abode. However, he was also unwilling to give it up. The demon sect had searched for that cave abode for several generations of elders, spanning hundreds of years. How could he let others obtain it? At this moment, the Snake King spoke. "Now that things have come to this, I'm sure everyone will be unwilling to leave and stay. Why don't everyone rely on their own abilities? After entering the demon emperor's cave abode, the heavenly book will belong to whoever obtains it." Chapter 402. What the Snake King said was a solution within a solution. There were 3 major factions, and more than 10 smaller factions. If no one gave in, then no one could enter the demon emperor's cave abode. Instead of continuing the stalemate, it was better to put aside the dispute and participate together. As for who could obtain that page of the heavenly book, it would depend on their own abilities. Even if they couldn't obtain it, they could only blame themselves for being inferior. After the Snake King made his suggestion, the sloppy Taoist priest looked at Li Mu. Li Mu nodded slightly. It was impossible to monopolize the demon emperor's cave abode now. If they competed fairly, they had a high chance of winning. It wasn't unacceptable. The sloppy Taoist priest said, "We agree. You can ask that little tabby cat if it agrees." The demon Grand Elder didn't agree, but he didn't reject either. It was a tacit agreement. There were so many powerhouses here. His opinion wasn't important. Seeing that no one objected, the Snake King continued. "After the demon emperor died, the cave abode has no owner. Those above the 6th realm cannot enter, so we can only send in our subordinates. For the sake of fairness, including us, no matter if it's the Great Zhou court, the 6 Taoist sects, or the various demon Tao sects, each faction can only send in 5 subordinates below the 6th realm. Does anyone have a different opinion?" The Snake King's words were fair. No one raised any objections. Including Li Mu, there were a total of 6 5th realm consecrators in the imperial court. One of them had to stay outside. Only 5 of the elders brought by the 6 sects could enter. Very quickly they decided on the candidates. The 4 demon Tao sects and the demon kings also chose their strongest subordinates. For now, the 3 factions reached a temporary compromise. The next problem was to enter the demon emperor's cave abode. If there were only a few 6th realm powerhouses in the valley, they would have to put in a lot of effort to find the entrance. However, there were a total of 17 6th realm powerhouses here. Under the influence of benefits, the 17 of them joined forces to cast spells. Their magic power focused on a point in the void. A hole was immediately torn in that space. One could vaguely see that it was connected to another space. The Snake King said in a low voice, "Go in quickly. We can't hold it for long." The 5 shadows behind him were the first to fly into the crack. Then the subordinates of the other 3 demon kings also jumped in. Following them were the people from the 4 demonic sections. Seeing Huanji and the others fly in, Li Mu, the other 4 consecrators, and the 5 elders of the Fulu school also flew in. In the valley, more than 10 people withdrew their spells. The spatial entrance also disappeared, and the sky returned to normal. The 3 forces stood in 3 different places, each on guard against the other. At this time, Li Mu looked at the vast expanse of whiteness around him and raised his vigilance to the highest level. The White Emperor's cave mansion was not like what he had imagined. In front of him, there was only a white fog. He could only see 3 or 4 steps away from him. Beyond 5 steps, there was only a thick white fog, and he could not see anything. When Li Mu's spiritual awareness left his body, the range it could explore was no more than 10 steps. Suddenly, he felt a sense of danger. His body moved a few feet to the side, and a flying sword brushed past his neck. Li Mu squinted his eyes and looked at the thick fog in front of him. A figure walked out from there. He glanced at Huanji and asked indifferently, "What, do you want to fight?" The flying sword flew back and floated above Huanji's head. She looked at Li Mu with a face full of anger. Just as she was about to activate the flying sword to attack again, the people beside her advised, "Lord Huanji, finding the heavenly book is more important." Huanji took a deep breath and glared fiercely at Li Mu again. Then she turned and disappeared into the thick fog. The Fox clan clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred. They would not refuse to repay kindness, nor would they not take revenge. It was not easy for her to persuade her father to leave the demon country and complete the mission alone. At that time, she was heroic and heroic. She vowed to prove her ability to her father. Then she met Li Mu. Li Mu gave her the first setback in her demon life, and it was during her first mission. This kind of blow made her depressed for a few months, and she couldn't recover from it. Towards this human who ended her first mission and humiliated her, if she did not return the humiliation 100 times over, she would live in humiliation for the rest of her life. However, for now, finding the heavenly book was more important. 3 days later, the experts outside would open this space again. As long as she found the heavenly book, she would have enough time to take revenge. Huanji had just provoked him to fight, but she left irresponsibly. The situation in the thick fog ahead was unknown, so Li Mu could not chase after her. The demon path people who came in first, the demon king's subordinates, were nowhere to be found. Beside Li Mu, the leading elders of the other 5 sects cupped their hands and said, "Martial Uncle Ling Jizi, we will also go elsewhere to search." Although the 6 sects were close, they each represented their own interests. After entering the demon emperor's cave, they scattered and searched on their own. Li Mu finally looked at the 5 people from the Fulu school and asked, "What about you?" The leading Taoist priest said, "Before we came, the sect master said that we will listen to Martial Uncle Ling Jizi's command in this operation." Li Mu nodded and said, "That's good. The situation here is unknown. If we move together, we can take care of each other." The demon emperor's cave was very different from what Li Mu had imagined. It was all white and there was no sense of direction. They did not know how big this space was, and where should they find the Tao page. Could it be that they had to search around like headless flies? At this time, the leading elder of the Fulu school took out a piece of Fulu from his sleeve and handed it to Li Mu, saying, "The sect master asked me to give this to Martial Uncle. He said that this piece of Fulu will lead us to the location of the Tao page." "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Li Mu glanced at him, took the piece of Fulu, and threw it into the air. The piece of Fulu turned into a paper crane and slowly flapped its wings, flying to the left. Li Mu and the others followed the paper crane. While being vigilant of their surroundings, they slowly moved forward. In the thick fog not far ahead, an elder of the North sect took out a compass from his chest. After inserting his Fa Li, the compass needle spun rapidly and stopped after a while. At this time, the compass needle was pointing in the same direction as Li Mu and the others. In another direction, the 5 people of the Spirit Array sect followed behind a small flag in the air and silently moved forward. Although the elders of the 6 sects were separated and did not travel in the same direction, if they were to extend their route, they would find that sooner or later, they would meet at a certain place. At the same time, the 10 people of the Meizong sect and the Mirage sect, under the guidance of Huanji, were still heading in the same direction. Li Mu slowly walked in the thick fog. Besides the footsteps of a group of people, he could not hear anything else. Dead silence. All he could feel in this space was a deathly stillness. There were no living creatures here. The ground was bare. Not to mention trees, there was not even a blade of grass or a flower. Other than the lack of living creatures, there was no spiritual energy in this space. This also meant that the Fa Li in their body could only be replenished with spiritual jades. Once the Fa Li in their body was depleted, the spiritual jades would also be used up. A cultivator at the peak of the 5th level would not be much stronger than a normal person. In this situation, all the sense of security that a cultivator had came from the Fa Li in their body. Li Mu reminded, "Everyone be careful. Try to conserve your Fa Li as much as possible and avoid any unnecessary consumption of Fa Li." At this time, a consecrator of the imperial court who was leading the way suddenly stopped and said, "Lord Li, there is something in front." Li Mu took 2 steps forward. Indeed, in the thick fog ahead, he saw a black shadow. The black shadow was half the height of a person. It was squarish and motionless. It did not look like a living thing. Li Mu took a closer look and realized that it was a stone tablet. Along the way, other than the ground under their feet and the thick fog around them, the entire world was empty. This stone tablet was the first thing they encountered here. The consecrator stood in front of the stone tablet. As if he had discovered something, he said, "There are words on the tablet." The few of them took a closer look. Indeed, they found some marks on the stone tablet. However, those crooked marks were not in the common language of the Great Zhou. The group could not recognize a single word. Li Mu did not recognize it either. He only felt that the handwriting was somewhat familiar. He had seen Xiao Bai's handwriting before. It was very similar to this handwriting. If he guessed correctly, this should be the ancient language of the demon clan. As for the specific content of the tablet, he did not know. A consecrator took a few steps forward and said, "There are more in front. There are more here too. There are many more stone tablets in front. Why do I feel like these are gravestones?" The few of them continued forward. They realized that they seemed to have entered a forest of stone tablets. There were hundreds of densely packed stone tablets here. The images of the tablets were faintly discernible in the thick fog, making the already strange space even more strange. This made the group more cautious. They went around the stone tablets and continued forward slowly. However, even Li Mu did not notice that when they walked past the gravestones, some of the aura emitted from their bodies was attracted by the gravestones and entered the ground. In this space that had been dead for who knows how many years, their entry brought life to this place. At the same time, a few thousand steps to their left, Phantom Princess looked at the words on a stone tablet and read softly, "Spiritual Ape King's 7th Personal Guard." A handsome man beside her revealed a joyful expression and said, "According to the ancient records, the Spiritual Ape King was one of the 10 great demon generals under the Demon Emperor. This is indeed the Demon Emperor's cave." As soon as he finished speaking, Phantom Princess's expression changed. She said, "Be careful." Before the person could react, he suddenly felt something tighten around his leg. He looked down and saw a bone-like hand grabbing his ankle and pulling it down. The ground cracked open, and he was directly dragged underground. After a violent spiritual energy fluctuation, the handsome man broke out of the ground. His face was extremely pale. He floated in the air. The position of one of his legs was empty. Kacha creak. At the same time, there was a scalp-numbing chewing sound from underground. Chapter 403. Crunch. The handsome man had lost a leg. The sound of bones being chewed came from the ground. This made everyone, including Huanji, feel their hair stand on end. The Meizong and Mirage sect were mostly humans. They were different from the beasts that liked to eat raw food. When had they ever seen such a bloody scene? Soon the sound of bones being chewed stopped. A skinny figure jumped out from the ground. It was a humanoid creature that looked more like an ape. Its body was only covered with skin and bones. There was nothing in its two empty eye sockets. Its withered hair was stuck to its head. The corner of its mouth was full of blood and minced meat. It looked quite terrifying. Huanji said with a pale face, "Demonic corpse. It has been thousands of years. How can there still be demonic corpses here?" The ape corpse emitted a thick corpse aura. It let out a roar and pounced towards Huanji. In another place, a 5th-level core formation demonic bear of the bear tribe covered his bloody broken arm. He looked at the black shadow that was biting his arm in the fog. He felt a chill in his heart. Although it was also a demonic creature, it had never been so cruel. It was different from those wild demonic bears. Its parents were demonic beasts. It was born with intelligence. It ate cooked meat and drank fruit juice. The thick smell of blood made him feel nauseous. At this time, the black shadow had finished biting his arm and pounced towards him from the fog. 100 steps behind him, several people from the demonic Dao and demon sect were attacking a demonic corpse that came out from the ground. In other places, the elders of the 6 Dao sects were also in a similar situation. A female elder of the Pill Cauldron sect looked at the wolf corpse that was pouncing towards her. She waved her hand and threw a pill into the wolf corpse's mouth. Sizzle! Green smoke came out of the wolf corpse's mouth. Soon its entire body turned into a pile of powder. In another place, a bear corpse was pouncing towards the elder of the South sect. It was punched in the head and the bear corpse's head exploded. At almost the same time, a leopard corpse was killed by the sword array of the spirit array sect. At the place where Xuanzong was, lightning suddenly struck down from the fog and killed the 2 black shadows. On the northern sect's side, a demonic corpse stretched out its sharp claws and stabbed at a northern sect elder. With a few crisp sounds, its claws broke. At the same time, its head was easily cut off by the northern sect elder's sword. Somewhere in the cave dwelling, Li Mu watched as the 2 monster corpses turned to ashes beneath the fulu, a thoughtful expression on his face. Why would there be a strange demon corpse here? Although zombies lived longer than most races, it was impossible for them to live for more than 3,000 years. From the moment a corpse gained sentience, it had to re-enter the cycle of life and death. Furthermore, these demonic corpses looked extremely strange. Their strength was obviously not weak, and they were not weaker than a 4th realm flying stiff. However, they did not possess the simple intelligence of a flying stiff. Under normal circumstances, this was impossible. Unless they were strong cultivators above the 5th realm before they died. The strength of a strong cultivator's corpse would naturally be extraordinary. They had existed in the form of corpses in this cave dwelling for as long as 3,000 years. Perhaps the entrance of Li Mu and the others had stimulated them, causing them to mutate. This was the only reason that could explain why there were demon corpses that had lived for 3,000 years. Although these corpses were very old, they had only mutated for a short period of time. If the corpses buried under these stone tablets were the corpses of strong cultivators from the demon clan from 3,000 years ago, and because of the influx of living people, the process of mutating had accelerated, then Li Mu looked at the other stone tablets. Indeed, he saw that all the surrounding stone tablets had begun to shake violently. He looked at the people around him and said in a low voice, "This place is strange. Everyone be careful underground." Black shadows broke out from the ground under the stone steel. The thick corpse aura mixed with the smell of decay seemed to have diluted the surrounding fog a little. A Fulu school elder frowned and said, "Why are there so many demon corpses in the demon emperor's cave dwelling?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "Don't worry about that. Let's get rid of them first. Otherwise, more and more of them will gather. If we can use the Fulu, try not to exhaust your own mana." Yes. Hearing this, the Fulu school disciples and the high priests of the imperial court all launched their Fulu attacks. The demon corpses in front of them had to be destroyed. Otherwise, they would be in a dilemma. Fortunately, these demon corpses only had strength but no intelligence. It was very easy to get rid of them. The group continued to move forward at a slow pace. In the process of moving forward, Li Mu also noticed that the fog around them was tumbling and sending waves of mana waves. Obviously, the others here were also fighting with the demon corpses. Li Mu carefully observed these demon corpses. A mystery gradually emerged in his heart. From the strength of these demon corpses, their masters should have been strong cultivators of the demon clan when they were alive. If these strong cultivators died in an accident, then their corpses would most likely not be left behind. Under normal circumstances, only when one's lifespan was exhausted would there be corpses left behind. But from the appearance of these demon corpses, they did not die because their lifespan was exhausted. These demon corpses had strong bodies. Most of them were still in the prime of their lives. They were at the peak of their strength. How could they all die in one place? Li Mu looked at the demon corpses that were still surging out. A thought suddenly arose in his mind. Could it be that they were all buried with the White Emperor? After the Demon Emperor White Emperor died, the demon soldiers and demon generals under his command were buried with him. This was the only possibility that could explain why there were so many tombstones neatly arranged here. As Li Mu was thinking about this, he heard the voices of the high priests and elders. The Fulu is all used up. Mine is also all used up. Why are there so many demon corpses here? This cave abode had been isolated from the outside world for 3,000 years. There was no supply of spiritual qi. After the Fulu was used up, they could only use their mana. Any wise cultivator would not use up all their magic power when they could not replenish their magic power, and when the crisis was not over. This was no different from courting death. Li Mu took out all the spiritual jades and Fulu from his flask heaven space, and distributed them to everyone. He said, "Everyone use the Fulu first. After the Fulu is used up, then use your mana. Remember to use the spiritual jades to replenish your mana at all times." Looking at his flask heaven ring, and then looking at the flask heaven cave abode of others, Li Mu finally understood the difference between them. The storage ring that the White Demon King gave him was only the size of a room. It was cramped for one person to live in. The Demon Emperor White Emperor's cave abode could no longer be described as a villa or a mansion. This was the real flask heaven world. In the blink of an eye, another demon corpse emerged from under a stone tablet. Li Mu casually struck it with a thunder talisman, turning it into ashes. The few of them followed the guidance of the paper crane, and continued forward. God knows how many demon corpses they killed. Although the further they went, the fewer stone tablets and demon corpses there were, the stronger the demon corpses they encountered were. From early stage level 4, to mid-stage level 4, to late-stage level 5 demon corpses just now. After death, the demon corpses had the power of early-stage level 5 demon corpses. That meant that the owner of the demon corpses was at least level 6 when they were alive. In today's world, level 6 demon corpses were considered powerful existences. To think that they could be buried with others. This really overturned Li Mu's understanding of the world. The good thing was that there were not many demon corpses of this level. Furthermore, they did not have spiritual intelligence, and were much weaker than cultivators of the same level. Even so, along the way, the group had used up most of their Fulu and spiritual jades. Before entering the White Emperor's cave abode, no one would have thought that the first part of the journey would be so difficult. Only when there were no more stone tablets around them, and no more demon corpses, jumping out did the group realize that they had arrived at a vast square. What they were stepping on was no longer earth, but crystal clear spiritual jades. However, the spiritual jades laid on the ground did not have any spiritual qi. If the spiritual qi in the spiritual jades was absorbed by cultivators at an accelerated rate, the entire spiritual jade would turn into dust the moment the spiritual qi was exhausted. Only when the spiritual qi was allowed to slowly dissipate, could it form a complete spiritual jade stone. It was not hard to imagine that the spiritual jades laid here 3,000 years ago should still contain spiritual qi. However, as time passed, the spiritual qi in the spiritual jades had all dissipated. Spiritual jades were items that gathered spiritual qi from the outside world. However, when there was no spiritual qi in the outside world, the spiritual qi in the spiritual jade could not be retained, and would gradually dissipate outside. However, this dissipation speed was extremely slow. It would take hundreds to thousands of years for the spiritual qi in a spiritual jade to dissipate completely. These spiritual jades without spiritual qi also showed that this place had been through a long period of time. The fog in the square was much thinner than outside the square. The group could already see the situation 100 steps away. In a certain direction, the fog rolled and several figures walked out. Huan Ji's group of 10 people seemed to be in a sorry state. Their faces were all pale, and their bodies were covered with injuries. One of the handsome men had even lost a leg, and he looked rather miserable. Huan Ji did not expect Li Mu to arrive here before them. After her expression changed slightly, she maintained a certain distance from them and sat cross-legged on the ground. She took out 2 spiritual jades and held them in her hands as she meditated. Not long after, more figures walked out from the fog. After Xuanzong's group of 5 walked to the square, they smiled at Li Mu and the others. They also found a place and held spiritual jades in their hands to recover their spiritual qi. Shortly after, the elders of the South Sect, North Sect, Pill Cauldron Sect, and Spirit Array Sect also arrived at the square. Following closely behind them were the Ghost Sect and the Demon Sect. 5 people from the Demon Sect entered, but only 4 arrived. Among them, one had a broken arm and one had a broken leg. Although the Ghost Sect did not have fewer people, their bodies were much more illusory than when they entered. One of them was at the 5th realm when they entered, but when he arrived, his aura was only at the 4th realm. The last to arrive were the subordinates of the 4 Demon Kings. Of the 5 subordinates of the Snake King, only 4 were left. Of the 5 subordinates of the Bear King, one had a broken arm, one had a deep wound on his chest, and the other 3 were covered in wounds. The blood that seeped out of their wounds was black. Of the 5 subordinates of the Panther King and the Wolf King, only 3 were left. Just this short distance was enough to see the difference in strength between the various factions. When the 6 sects of the Dao sect passed through the land of demon corpses, they did not suffer any losses at all. The Fiend sects only lost 1 demon while the 4 Demon Kings suffered heavy losses. Unknowingly, the fog in the square dissipated a little. Everyone's gazes were focused ahead. In the thin fog, an incomparably majestic palace stood in the middle of the square. Chapter 404. Only now did everyone realize that they were in a square in front of a palace. Huan Ji looked at the palace and muttered, "Demon Emperor Palace." Above Li Mu's head, the paper crane flapped its wings and slowly flew towards the palace, finally landing on the stone steps in front of the palace. All the Dao pages in this world came from the Dao scripture. The Fulu that Xianjizi gave him contained the aura of the Dao pages, and could sense the location of the other Dao pages. Obviously, the Dao page that Demon Emperor Bai Di once had was in this palace. The compass in the hands of an elder of the northern sect trembled a few times, and pointed towards the palace. The people of the demon sect, as well as the subordinates of the various demon kings, looked at the palace shrouded in mist, a strange light flashing in their eyes. Everyone knew very well that their target this time was inside the palace. But no one acted rashly. In the short time that they had walked to the square, they had already suffered heavy losses. Who knew if there were any other dangers in this Demon Emperor Palace? No one was willing to take the first step. The first to move was the Spirit Array sect. Although the elders of the 6 Taoist sects had expended a lot of energy in the battle with the monster corpses, their overall strength had been preserved. This was also the foundation of the 6 Taoist sects that was different from the Demon Kings and the Demon sects. In fact, any one of the 6 sects could easily destroy a branch of the Demon sects. But compared to the entire Demon sects, it was far inferior. Although the 6 sects combined could suppress the Demon sects, they could not bear the losses of destroying them. The role of a 7th realm expert was no different from a nuclear bomb. The Demon sects, the Taoist sects, the Imperial Court, and the Buddhist sects were all nuclear powers. No matter how deep the hatred between them was, they would not easily interfere in the war of the upper realms. If they could not control or destroy all the 7th realm experts in one go, they would have to be prepared to be destroyed together. Following the actions of the Spirit Array sect, after some consideration, the other forces followed behind them and slowly approached the palace. Although no one was willing to take the lead, if they stood here, The treasures would not fly out of the Demon Emperor Palace. When the time came, the Spirit Array sect would eat the meat, and they would not even be able to drink the soup. The fact that the Spirit Array sect didn't have any scruples meant that there was no array formation here. They didn't want to be trapped in an array formation after escaping from the monster corpse. Li Mu led the Imperial Court Guardians and Fulu school students, but they did not walk at the front. He felt that something was not quite right. Whether it was the mist in the Demon Emperor's cave abode, the neat rows of stone steels around the Demon Emperor's palace, or the unnatural deaths of the ancient demon clan experts under the stone steels, everything was strange. As the group approached the demonic Emperor Palace, the thin layer of fog in the plaza gradually did not affect their vision. The full view of the Demon Imperial Palace appeared before everyone's eyes. This was a magnificent palace. In terms of size, it couldn't compare to the Great Zhou Imperial Palace, but this palace alone was more luxurious than any other palace in the Imperial Palace. Outside the palace, there were several white jade pillars carved with many reliefs. The reliefs depicted scenes of hundreds of Fae worshipping the Fae Imperial Palace. 3,000 years ago, the Demon Emperor Bai Di was a true demon sovereign. He had countless Fae soldiers under his command, and he had 10 great Fae kings, each of whom was a powerhouse in the upper realm. That was the time when the demon clan was the most powerful in the last 10,000 years. They were so powerful that even the human clan had to avoid them. In front of the Demon Emperor Palace, there was a huge statue. The statue was about 3 feet tall, and it was a mighty middle-aged man. He stood in front of the Demon Emperor Palace, overlooking the entire plaza. His body was full of an aura of disdain for the world. It was just a statue, but it made people want to submit to him from the bottom of their hearts. The elders of the 6 sects and the people of the demon path were better off. The subordinates of the 4 great Fae kings were all pale. They lowered their heads, and a look of submission appeared on their faces. In front of the former demon emperor, they couldn't bring up any thoughts of resistance. Li Mu looked at the statue of the demon emperor, and only sighed in his heart. No matter how powerful his master was, he couldn't resist the invasion of time. 3,000 years had passed, and no matter how powerful his existence was, it was inevitable for him to return to dust. Li Mu always subconsciously felt that 3,000 years was very short, but thinking about it carefully, the Chinese civilization was only 5,000 years old. 3,000 years ago, the land of China was still the Western Zhou dynasty. At that time, King Wu had just conquered the Zhou dynasty. Suddenly, Li Mu felt that the Demon Emperor Palace in front of him was filled with an ancient aura. The Demon Emperor Palace's gate was wide open. Everyone finally stopped in front of the gate, and didn't rush to go in. If the gate of the Demon Emperor Palace was closed, they might break in without hesitation. But as everyone knew, before the Demon Emperor's lifespan ended, he opened up his own cave and treated it as a tomb. Who would open their own tomb and welcome others in? Until they noticed that there was a stone tablet in front of the Demon Emperor Palace. After 3,000 years, spirit jades will lose their spiritual qi, pills will lose their medicinal efficacy, and magic weapons will also lose their spirituality. But a stone is still a stone. There were words engraved on the stone tablet, but they were still written in the demon clan's language, which Li Mu didn't understand. Huan Ji glanced at those words, and joy appeared in her eyes, but she didn't say anything. A bear demon couldn't help but murmur. I cultivated for more than 300 years and traveled to the 10 continents and 3 islands. I obtained the heavenly tomes and spirit veins, and became a heavenly demon. I unified the demon clan, and competed with the 6 sects. There were few who could match me, but in the end I couldn't defeat the heavenly Tao and couldn't cultivate immortality. The elders of the 6 sects stood in front of the magnificent Demon Emperor Palace, and listened to the last words of a powerful cultivator. Their faces were filled with confusion. Even the most powerful cultivators in the 9th realm only had a lifespan of about 300 years. They were now only at the 5th realm. If they couldn't advance to the 7th realm in a few decades, they would be like ordinary mortals and only be left with a pile of dirt in the end. Even the most powerful cultivators in the 9th realm were like this. What were they cultivating for? They were far away from the secular world and cultivated in seclusion. What was the point? It wasn't just the elders of the 6 sections. Even the demonic cultivators and Yao cultivators present were at a loss after hearing these words. To Li Mu, immortality was good, but if he couldn't live forever, it would still be a perfect life to be with the person he loved and grow old together. To an adult who couldn't cultivate, this was a realization that everyone had to have. Feeling the elders of the 6 sects suddenly become depressed, Li Mu said in a low voice, "Cultivate your Tao. Why do you care about others?" With the help of his dermic powers, this low voice directly exploded in everyone's ears. The elders of the 6 sects trembled, and their eyes quickly became clear. After regaining their senses, they felt a lingering fear in their hearts. Just now, they were almost confused by the White Emperor's lamentation before his death. The most difficult part of cultivation was the cultivation of the heart. Once their Tao heart was lost, it was easy for the inner demon to take advantage of it. At that time, stagnation or regression of cultivation would be the least of it. Once controlled by the inner demon, it was very likely that they would lose their minds and become the inner demon's puppet. At that time, their only outcome would be to be dealt with by their peers to prevent them from bringing disaster to the world. Including the disciples of the Fulu school, the elders of the 6 sects bowed to him and said gratefully, "Thank you, martial uncle." If it was before, they were still dissatisfied with this young martial uncle of the Fulu school. Then the loud shout just now made them completely treat this young martial uncle as a senior of the sect. When they encountered problems in cultivation, he pointed out the direction for them. This was something that a senior of the sect would do. His words just now were like pouring water on their heads, waking them up from their confusion. A few of the imperial consecrators also broke out in cold sweat. They bowed and said, "Thank you, Lord Li." The subordinates of the 4 great demon kings all clasped their fists to Li Mu. Those who only had one arm and couldn't clasp their fists also bowed to him. The kindness of guiding one's cultivation was a great kindness. Even if they were demons, they understood this principle. Huanji, who came back to her senses, looked at Li Mu in a daze. Her gaze became a little complicated. Standing in front of the cave abode of the demon clan cultivator from 3,000 years ago, and listening to the lamentation of the 9th realm cultivator before his death, even she was disturbed. If no one enlightened her, her future cultivation path would be greatly affected. What made her feel conflicted was that she and Li Mu were enemies, but Li Mu had just helped her greatly. It was not the tradition of the Celestial Fox clan to only take revenge and not repay the kindness. But how should she take revenge and repay the kindness? Huanji finally gritted her teeth. The Celestial Fox clan clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred. Everything had to be done according to first come, first served. Even if she wanted to repay the kindness, it would be after she had taken her revenge. After everyone regained their senses, Li Mu continued to look at the bear demon and said, "What else did the demon king say?" Before the bear demon could speak, Huanji interrupted and said, "The demon king said that after he died, the treasures of the demon palace and the page of the heavenly book would be left to the fated person who entered the cave abode. He hoped that the fated person who received his inheritance would be able to revitalize the demon clan again." Li Mu looked at her and asked, "Really?" Huanji looked at him coldly and said, "Why would I lie to you?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "I don't believe it." He looked at the bear demon and asked again, "What else did the demon king say?" The bear demon said, "She is right. The demon king is dead. He left the demon palace and the treasures inside to the fated person who came later." At this point, there was an explanation for why the demon palace was not closed. Even though the demon king was dead, he still remembered the demon clan, and left the demon palace to his descendants. Immediately, all the demon clan members present felt deep respect for him. This was the true demon king. Li Mu looked at the stone tablet, and was puzzled. If Emperor Bai wanted to pass down his demon legacy, why didn't he do it back then? Why did he have to wait 3,000 years? No matter how you look at it, it doesn't make sense. However, seeing the group of demon clan members looking at the demon palace with reverence, almost kneeling down to thank it, Li Mu did not question it. He did not expect these one-track-minded demon clan members to understand these things. However, in his heart he raised his guard by a few degrees. Huanji walked in front of the stone tablet and looked at Li Mu and the others. She said, "You can't go in." Li Mu glanced at her and asked, "Why?" Huanji puffed out her chest and said confidently, "Didn't you see what is written on the stone tablet? The Demon King wants to pass down the Demon Palace to the Demon Clan. Why are you humans here?" Li Mu crossed his arms and said, "Anyway, we don't know the demon language. Maybe you all colluded to lie to us. Also, humans and demons are both creatures of the world. Humans are born by their mothers. Demons are also born by their mothers. No one is more noble than the other. Why can you all enter but we can't?" Huanji's lips moved. She was speechless at Li Mu's words. Actually, from the bottom of her heart, she quite liked what Li Mu said. Humans were the leader of all creatures. They were the noblest race. In comparison, the Demon Clan was a lower race in their eyes. Many cultivators slaughtered the Demon Clan and took their souls. They were not guilty of anything. Even the Demon Clan did not deny the status of humans as the leader of all creatures. They tried so hard to cultivate a human form and become human. Wasn't that an implicit acknowledgement of this? Humans were born by their mothers. Demons were also born by their mothers. No one is more noble than the other. This was the first time she heard a human say this. If Li Mu was not her enemy and did not fight with her for the Demon King's treasure, just based on what he said, she would become friends with him. Unfortunately, he was from the Great Zhou court. They were destined to be enemies. Huanji sneered. "The Demon King's inheritance is for us demons. You humans also want to fight for it. Do you have any shame?" Li Mu retorted. "The Demon King said that it was a fated person, not a fated demon. What face do you have to fight for it?" Huanji said, "You are twisting words and forcing logic." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "Don't say anything. Why don't we fight? Whoever wins will go in." Li Mu and Huanji argued. They realized that the demon sect and the 4 Demon King's subordinates had already entered the Demon Palace. These damn demons did not care about martial ethics. Li Mu and Huanji looked at each other and immediately came to an agreement. Umph, umph. The two of them snorted coldly at the same time. They turned around and led their own people in. At the same time, on the first floor of the Demon Palace, the demons that had just walked in exclaimed at the same time, "The consciousness opening pill that helps beasts gain intelligence. The body shaping pill that allows them to form a demon body. The body shaping pill that allows body shaping beasts to transform in advance. This kind of pill can increase the chances of transforming into a demon core. This is the realm breaking pill that allows level 5 demons to enter level 6. With the fall of the Demon King, weren't these pills lost long ago?" Li Mu looked into the hall and saw a row of wooden shelves. On the wooden shelves, there were crystal clear jade bottles. From the outside, he could see that there were many pills in the jade bottles. On the surface of the pills, there was spirit chi circulating. No pill could be preserved for 3,000 years. These pills had not lost their spirit chi until now. It must be because of these jade bottles. These crystal clear pill bottles sealed the spirit chi of the pills. In front of each pill bottle, there was an introduction in demon language. Although Li Mu did not understand demon language, he could roughly understand the importance of these pills to the Demon Clan from the discussions of the demons. These rows of pills, from the consciousness opening pill to the realm breaking pill, could provide a one-stop service. In 10 to 20 years, a large group of Demon Clan experts could be created. From a wild beast to a level 6 Demon King, it might only take 30 years. The Elixir Cauldron sect could also achieve this speed. However, the difficulty of refining pills like the realm-breaking pill was no less than getting the Fulu school to draw a sage-level Fulu without Li Mu. Even so, to be able to create a level 5 Demon Clan expert in 20 years was already very fast. It was no wonder that the Demon Clan was so powerful when Emperor Bai was the Demon King, but then gradually declined. At the very least, he did not pass down this set of refining pills for the Demon Clan. Other than the elders of the Elixir Cauldron sect who looked at these pills with interest, the rest of the people did not pay much attention to them after a glance. No matter how strong these pills were, they were for the Demon Clan. There were still differences between the bodies of humans and the Demon Clan. Pills that were highly nutritious for the demon clan might be fatal for humans. However, to the demons present, these pills were fatally tempting. The demons present were all level 5 demons. A few of them were even at the peak of level 5. As long as they could obtain that realm-breaking pill, they would have a high chance of reaching level 6 and becoming a demon king. Which demon could resist such temptation? Unfortunately, there was only one realm-breaking pill, but there were 20 demon clan experts present. A wolf demon was the fastest. It stretched out its claws and went straight for the realm-breaking pill bottle. A few rays of cold light flashed in the air. Another tiger claw appeared. Its target was not the realm-breaking pill, but the wolf demon's back. The wolf demon was caught off guard. Its back was hit by the claw, and its skin immediately split open. Blood spurted out, and the wound was so deep that its bones could be seen. It let out a howl and glared at a tiger demon from the demon sect. That tiger demon greedily licked the blood on its claw and grinned. "You didn't even ask us. Isn't that too much?" The injured wolf demon stood with its 2 companions. 3 figures also stood out from behind the tiger demon. After passing through the land of demon corpses, the wolf demon had lost 2 while the demon sect had lost 1. They did not have the upper hand against the demon sect. At the same time, the snake demon clan, leopard demon clan, and bear demon clan were also eyeing covetously from the side. The realm-breaking pill was fatally tempting to all the demons here. The tiger demon scanned the demons and said coldly, "Whoever dares to touch this pill will be going against the demon sect and the demon sect." He used the demon sect to suppress the demons and strode toward the wooden shelf where the realm-breaking pill was placed. However, when he reached out with his tiger claw, a whip wrapped around his wrist. A snake demon held a long whip and pulled the tiger demon's arm. It said coldly, "The demon country is not the territory of the demon sect. If you want this pill, why don't you show some real skills?" After saying that, he looked at the 5 bear demons and said, "Black Blind, let's get this pill together. After we get out, no matter who gets this pill in the end, we have to compensate the other party. What do you think?" The 5 bear demons did not say anything. They stood together with the 4 snake demons and formed a temporary alliance. Seeing this, the wolf demon and the leopard demon, who were left with only 3 demons, also stood side by side. At a certain moment, someone made the first move. The demon sect, the leopard wolf alliance, and the snake bear alliance were fighting over a realm-breaking pill. These demons used their sharp claws and teeth the best. The snake demon clan mainly used demon arts and poison attacks, causing the entire first floor of the hall to be filled with a foul atmosphere. Li Mu and the rest were not interested in the demon clan's pills on the first floor. They flew up to the second floor. On the second floor of the demon palace, there were many treasures. They were all sealed in special jade boxes, and their spirituality was not reduced. In addition, at the center of the second floor, there was a small jade bottle. There was nothing in the jade bottle, as if there was nothing inside. However, no matter if it was Huan Ji or the elders of the 6 sects, they all rushed towards the jade bottle as soon as they stepped into the second floor. Feeling the buzzing sound in his ears, Li Mu raised his head and said calmly, "I want this bottle. Who agrees and who disagrees?" After he said that, the elders of the 6 sects paused and slowly retreated. Huan Ji's hand was already stretched out. When she heard Li Mu's words, she turned around and looked at him. She stomped her feet and retracted her hand. She gritted her teeth and said, "Now I don't owe you anything." Li Mu knew that he had saved Huan Ji once outside the demon palace. From her words and actions, Huan Ji was most likely from the Heavenly Fox clan. Therefore, she had to repay him for waking her up outside the hall. However, she wanted to use this jade bottle to exchange for her thoughts. Li Mu would not let her have her way. This was originally his. She did not need to give it to him. Li Mu looked at her and said, "You can object." Anger appeared in Huan Ji's eyes. She grabbed the jade bottle. Li Mu crossed his arms and said to the elders of the 6 sects and the consecrators, "Snatch it." Chapter 405. Huan Ji held the jade bottle in her hand. 9 people from the Charm sect and the Mirage sect guarded her. On Li Mu's side, For imperial consecrators and 5 Fulu school disciples had already surrounded the two sides. After the 5 sect elders looked at each other, they quickly made a decision and looked at Huanji. Huanji's side felt the pressure increase. Including Huanji herself, they only had 10 people here. On the other side, there were 35 people including the consecrators from the Great Zhou. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. They couldn't even fight. Li Mu looked at Huanji and comforted her. Look, we have more people than you. If we really fight, some of you will die. At that time, you won't be able to keep the item in your hand. Why don't you give it to me now? We won't have to fight. Wouldn't you be wasting your lives? The 9 people from the Charm sect and the Mirage sect hesitated. Although Li Mu's words were shameless, they were the truth. If they gave it to him, the jade bottle would fall into his hands. If they didn't give it to him, after these people killed them, the jade bottle would still fall into his hands. Since the outcome was already decided, why not just give it to him? Huanji's face darkened. She threw the jade bottle to Li Mu and gritted her teeth. She said hatefully, "You're not human." Li Mu kept the jade bottle and looked at her. He shook his head and said, "Between the two of us, I don't know who's not human. Don't you know?" Huanji was furious. She didn't want to talk to Li Mu. She gritted her teeth and said, "Call those brainless people up." The two went down the first level. Soon, the Demon Sect and Demon King's subordinates flew up. When they saw the Realmbreaker pill, they were like cats that smelled blood. They forgot their real purpose in entering the Demon Emperor's cave. That one page of the Heavenly Book was much more important than the Realmbreaker pill. At this moment, they were in a worse state than when they were attacked by the demon corpse. One of the 3 demon wolves had lost its body. Only its demon soul was left. One of the 3 demon leopards had lost its body. Unlike humans who cultivated their primordial spirit, demon strength would be greatly reduced if they lost their physical bodies. They were basically crippled. Of the 4 snake demons, 2 of them were beaten back to their original forms. Their tails couldn't transform into legs. Of the 5 bear demons, 2 of them could only exist as giant bears. As for the 4 demons of the demon sect, one of them had turned into a white tiger. The other 3 were covered in wounds and their auras were weak. All the demons told themselves in their hearts that the heavenly tomes were more important than the Realmbreaker pill. When they looked around and saw the Dharma treasures on the 2nd level of the Demon Imperial Palace, their eyes lit up and they were eager to try. Li Mu shook his head. No wonder the monster sect was the one that was looked down upon the most amongst the 10 demonic path sections. After all, they weren't humans. Sometimes, when they did things, they had to rely on their beastly instincts. If he interacted more with humans, this situation might change. If he stayed in the demon kingdom and lived with the thoughts of beasts and demons, compared to a cunning fox like Phantom Princess, he was indeed lacking in wisdom. Phantom Princess looked at the green eyes of the demons with a helpless expression. She then said, "Stop looking, let's go to the 3rd level." If not for Li Mu and the 6 sects of Taoism, it would be easy to obtain the treasures from these demons. Now she had to borrow their strength to fight against Li Mu and the 6 sects of Taoism. Her words awakened the demons in their dreams. All the demons were awakened by Phantom Princess and followed her to the 3rd level of the Demon Imperial Palace. The 3rd level was the top level of the Demon Imperial Palace. This should be the place that Fulu was referring to. Different from the first 2 levels, the 3rd level of the Demon Imperial Palace only had a platform made of white jade. The jade platform was half the height of a person. A page that Li Mu was familiar with floated on top of the jade platform. The moment they saw the page, many of them revealed a look of desire. However, none of them made a move. Everyone's goal was this page of the heavenly tomes. The first to make a move would definitely become the target of everyone. Therefore, the moment they saw the treasure, everyone quietened down. After a short moment of silence, Phantom Princess suddenly looked at the demons and said, "Everyone, this is the Demon Emperor's cave residence. This heavenly tomes are also the heavenly tomes of the demons. We cannot let it fall into the hands of humans. After we obtain this page of the heavenly tomes, we can comprehend it together." After Phantom Princess finished speaking, the demons fell into deep thought. With the 6 sects of Taoism around, It was impossible for them to obtain the heavenly tomes. If the demon sect obtained it, they might have a chance to comprehend it. If it fell into the hands of humans, they would lose this page of the heavenly tomes forever. At this moment, the forces that represented different interests came to an agreement without any discussion. From then on, the demon imperial palace was completely divided into two forces. One was the 6 sects of Taoism led by Li Mu. The other was the alliance of the 4 sects of demonic Tao and the 4 great demon kings. Originally, the two forces were evenly matched. The elders of the 6 sects of Taoism were individually strong while the alliance of the demonic Tao and the demon kings had more people. However, after the attacks of the demonic corpses, their strength was greatly reduced. If they were to fight to the death, they might not be a match for Li Mu. However, at this point they had no other choice. The fact that these demons would form an alliance was not out of Li Mu's expectations. After all, the demon emperor was the emperor of the demon race. What was recorded on the Tao page was also the cultivation path of the demon race. To them, the imperial court and the Taoist sects were robbers who came to snatch what belonged to the demon race. However, this time, Li Mu did not want to be a robber. He had no choice. After all, if the Tao page was obtained by the demon race or fell into the hands of the demon sect, they would be able to cultivate more powerful cultivators for them. In the near future, they would become a major threat to the Great Zhou. In that case, Li Mu's dream of conquering the demon nation and destroying the demon sect would be delayed indefinitely. The demon race and the demon sect did not want them to obtain the heavenly tomes. They also did not want the demon race and the demon sect to obtain the Tao page. On the 3rd floor of the demon imperial palace, the atmosphere was extremely tense. A great battle was about to break out. After a long period of silence, a figure shot out from the demon sect's position and headed in the direction of the heavenly tomes. At the south sect's position, an elder's body turned into an afterimage as he tried to stop the demon. In the next moment, everyone moved. The entire 3rd floor of the demon imperial palace erupted with dozens of waves of dermic power at the same time. After dealing with the countless demon corpses, the fulu, elixirs, formation flags, and one-time used dermic treasures in everyone's hands were all used up. Even the 0 jade was not much left. Among the 6 Taoist sects, the fulu school, the elixir cauldron sect, and the spirit array sect needed to rely on external items. Their strength was greatly reduced, and they could only deal with the slightly weaker subordinates of the Demon King. Elder Xuanzong used his own dermic powers to cast dermic powers. The South sect used their dermic powers for close combat. The North sect relied on the defense of their treasured robes and dermic treasures to suppress the 4 demonic sects. Holding 2 short swords in her hands, Huanji gritted her teeth and flew towards Li Mu alone. When he was still in the 4th realm, Li Mu was already able to suppress Huanji. Now his cultivation was not much weaker than Huanji's. However, in a space without spiritual qi and without the power of heaven and earth, he could not use his Tao techniques and his strength was also reduced. Even so, he could deal with Huanji with ease. The consecrators and the elders of the 6 sects were also suppressing their opponents. They were originally senior elders carefully selected by the various sects, and their strength was at the peak of the 5th realm. The consecrators of the imperial court were also the elites of the elites that Li Mu picked out from the consecrators department. On the other hand, although the demons and demonic sects were also in the 5th realm, most of them were not at the peak. If this continued, it was only a matter of time before his side won. What worried Li Mu was that everyone's fulu and elixirs had long been used up. There were not many spiritual jades left. Right now, the battle was using up the spiritual energy in their bodies. If their spiritual energy was used up, they would not be much stronger than normal people, and would not be able to deal with any other changes. For the demons, even if their spiritual energy was used up, they still had their bodies. Their super recovery ability and endurance were one of the advantages of monsters in the first place. The subordinates of the Demon King were already heavily injured, and their wounds were still bleeding. However, they were still able to fight back and forth with the elders. Although these demons were not very intelligent, when they fought with their lives on the line, it was still a headache. Huanji was also fighting with her life on the line. She held 2 short swords and attacked Li Mu without any regard for her life. Her face was filled with hatred. Those who did not know would think that Li Mu had abandoned her. Although Li Mu could easily deal with Huanji, he could not withstand her desperate attacks and his spiritual energy was quickly depleting. This could not go on. Li Mu was thinking of a solution. He looked around and when he saw a battle, his eyes narrowed. It was this moment of absent-mindedness that allowed Huanji to find his weakness. She stabbed her sword towards Li Mu's chest. However, she hesitated for a moment before stabbing towards his shoulder. Li Mu came back to his senses and stretched out his right hand. He grabbed her wrist that was holding the sword and frowned. "Something is wrong." Huanji flung his hand away and stabbed her sword again. She said angrily, "You can get distracted during a battle. Damn it, you actually looked down on me." Li Mu grabbed her wrist again and used his other hand to hit her head. He said in a low voice, "Stupid fox, haven't you noticed that something is wrong?" Huanji's other hand held her sword and slashed towards Li Mu's neck. She was extremely angry. "You dare to call me a stupid fox, I will kill you." Li Mu grabbed her other wrist and said in a low voice, "Look." Huanji's face was filled with anger. She struggled a few times and inadvertently looked into Li Mu's eyes. She saw the seriousness in his eyes and was shocked. She asked, "What are you looking at?" Li Mu looked at the white jade ground and muttered, "Where is the blood?" Huanji followed his gaze and saw a bear demon fighting with a Fulu school elder. He had lost an arm earlier, and blood was still flowing out from his broken arm. However, when the blood fell on the ground, it immediately seeped into the ground and disappeared without a trace. This strange situation caused Huanji's body to tremble. She said with a trembling voice, Why is it like this?" Li Mu also did not know the reason. However, his intuition told him that he could not stay here for long. He flew down and said, "Leave this place." Rumble Li Mu, who had just flown to the first floor of the Demon Emperor Palace, raised his head and saw the door of the Demon Emperor Palace close. P.S. Recently, I have been writing until night time. My fingers are in pain as if they are being pricked by needles. I couldn't bear writing half of this chapter. I used my phone to type in the other half. There might be mistakes. Chapter 406. The gate of the Demon Emperor Palace was closed. The entire first floor was eerily silent. At the end of the hall, there seemed to be something that made Li Mu's hair stand on end. Li Mu tried to open the gate of the Demon Emperor Palace. However, he realized that even if he used the great strength technique, he could not move the gate at all. He tried a few more spells but to no avail. In order to conserve his magic power, Li Mu quickly gave up on trying. At this moment, Illusion Princess had already flown to his side. She looked at the tightly shut gate of the Demon Emperor Palace and asked in shock, "Why is the gate here closed?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "When I came down, the gate closed by itself." Illusion Princess went forward and tried to push it a few times. However, the stone gate was extremely thick. After it closed, it became one with the Demon Emperor Palace. It was not something that could be moved with brute force. Illusion Princess was still trying. Li Mu said indifferently, "Save it. Save some magic power. Who knows what will happen later?" Illusion Princess looked back at him and said coldly, "It's none of your business." Li Mu was too lazy to care about her. The life and death of this demonic, which had nothing to do with him. However, everyone was trapped in this strange Demon Emperor Palace. They were like grasshoppers on a rope. Preserving her strength was the same as preserving his own strength. Although Illusion Princess had a bad attitude towards Li Mu, compared to those demons, she was clearly smarter. After Li Mu's reminder, she did not try to open the gate again. In this short period of time, everyone in the chaotic battle realized that something was wrong and stopped. What's going on? Why is the gate here closed? Who did it? Li Mu looked at the consecrators and elders of the 6 sects and said, "Everyone look around. See if there are any other exits. 10 people in a group. Do not scatter." Illusion Princess also ordered the demonic cultivators to look for other exits. At this moment, everyone realized that the entire Demon Emperor Palace only had one exit. There were no windows on the 3 floors. The reason why the hall was so bright was because of the glowing pearl on the ceiling. What is this? A woman from Maisong sect could not help but exclaim when she saw something on the ground in the hall on the 1st floor. Everyone looked over and saw the corpse of a giant wolf. In the battle earlier, a wolf demon and a leopard demon had lost their physical bodies, leaving only their demon souls behind. At this moment, their demon bodies had lost all their flesh and blood for some unknown reason. They had turned into dried corpses that were only skin and bones. They looked ferocious and terrifying. To the people in the hall, the dried corpses and zombies were not scary. What was scary was that they did not know the reason why the 2 demonic corpses had become like this. The unknown was always the scariest. Not only did the 2 demonic corpses change, even the bloodstains on the ground disappeared without a trace. At this time, the Fulu school elders and a few consecrators of the imperial court were looking for an exit. They had already reached the back of the palace hall. One of the consecrators raised his head and looked. He couldn't help but be shocked. What is this? Behind the wooden shelves was a blood-red coffin. The coffin was 1 zhang long and half a zhang wide. It was completely blood-colored, and as soon as Zhang Xian walked in, the stench of blood assaulted his nostrils. Because it was hidden behind the wooden shelves, no one had noticed it earlier. Soon, the crowd gathered around him. Why is there a coffin here? Could it be that the Lord Demon Emperor is inside this coffin? But why is the coffin blood-colored? Could it be that all the flesh and blood here has been absorbed by this coffin? As everyone surrounded the coffin and discussed endlessly, Li Mu silently retreated to the back of the crowd. In the next moment, a weak golden light flew out from the 3rd floor of the palace hall, and flew into Li Mu's sleeve without anyone noticing. Then he raised his head and looked at the coffin in front of him. This coffin was full of oddities. It could even actively absorb the blood of the Demon Emperor Palace. Li Mu wouldn't believe that this was a normal situation even if he was beaten to death. Thinking of the resurrected demonic corpses outside, Li Mu suddenly had a bold guess. Just as this thought appeared in his mind, the blood-colored coffin suddenly shone with a bright red light and exploded with a strong suction force. The 2 demonic bears closest to the coffin were almost sucked into it. They had to use all their strength to stabilize their bodies. However, the 2 demonic wolves and leopard demonic beasts that didn't have their demonic bodies and only had their demonic souls left were not so lucky. They were sucked into the blood coffin along with the ghost cultivator from the soul sect whose cultivation had dropped. After their souls touched the blood coffin, they entered it without any hindrance. Then, the suction force on the blood coffin disappeared, and there was no more sound from the coffin. However, the blood-colored coffin was rapidly fading away. Soon, the entire coffin became sparkling and translucent like jade. However, it was even more terrifying in the hearts of the crowd. Seeing this strange scene with their own eyes, everyone quickly retreated, wanting to get as far away from the stone coffin as possible. Creak! An ear-piercing sound of rubbing stones suddenly rang in everyone's ears. The lid of the stone coffin slid down little by little. When it was halfway down, it suddenly flew to one side. A figure flew out from the stone coffin and floated above the stone coffin. That figure was very tall, but not burly. In fact, it was just a layer of skin wrapped around bones. His eye sockets were sunken, and his eyeballs were withered. The few strands of hair on his head even looked a little comical. However, none of the people present were able to laugh. This was because its body was emitting a strong corpse aura. It was stronger than any of the demonic corpses they had encountered along the way. Li Mu cursed in his heart when he sensed the powerful aura on this corpse. If this corpse that suddenly jumped out didn't have a cultivation level above the 6th realm, he would have chopped its head off and kicked it like a ball. Who said that this space couldn't have 6th realm cultivators? Wasn't this a scam? F***ck her. Then he remembered that it was the Empress who had said that. He silently swallowed the words he was about to say. After the zombie in the coffin flew out of the stone coffin, it quietly floated in the air, looking a little dazed. A zombie that had just been formed didn't have any spiritual intelligence. It only had instincts. After floating quietly for a moment, its nose suddenly twitched a few times. Even if it didn't have any spiritual intelligence, it instinctively sensed that there was something it needed here. It inhaled sharply again. A wolf demon and a leopard demon suddenly flew forward. After a moment of shock, the two demons roared angrily. Their bodies suddenly changed. One turned into a human with a wolf's head, and the other a leopard's head. Their arms also became several times thicker. Hair as hard as steel needles grew. Sharp claws that could cut through metal and stone pierced towards the zombie's chest and head. Clang! Clang! Their claws collided with the zombie's body. Immediately, sparks flew. After two crisp sounds, the two demons' sharp nails broke and their claws bent. The zombie grabbed their necks and flew back into the coffin. The coffin lid automatically flew up and closed. This scene seemed to take a long time, but it was actually just a short moment. It wasn't until the two demons were caught into the coffin that everyone in the hall finally reacted. At this moment, whether it was the Tao sect or the demon sect, all the demons took out their Dharma treasures and cast spells to attack the stone coffin. Although there were still grudges and disputes between them, the most important thing now was to destroy this powerful demon corpse. However, no one knew what material the stone coffin was made of. Under the attacks of the Dharma treasures, only shallow scratches were left on it. All kinds of spells couldn't cause too much damage to it. After the stone coffin shook for a while, the lid flew out again. The wolf demon and leopard demon were also thrown out. At this moment, their bodies were all skin and bones. Their flesh and blood had disappeared. Even their demon souls were gone. The zombie flew out of the coffin again. At this moment, his skin was more lustrous than before. His eyes were also more lively than before. His eyes flickered as if he was thinking. Chapter 407. On the first floor of the demon palace. The zombie's eyes were already moving. It scanned the crowd, emitting a bloodthirsty aura. Li Mu had seen many zombies. From walking zombies, jumping zombies, to flying zombies, he had fought many of them. The one in front of him was undoubtedly the strongest zombie he had ever seen. After 3,000 years, the corpse was already at the sixth realm when it had just become a corpse. How powerful must the owner of this corpse have been when he was alive? Li Mu was already suspecting whether this was the corpse of the demon emperor by D. At that time he did not dare to confirm. After all, most cultivators would not leave behind a corpse after death. Before their lifespan ended, most of them would choose to self-destruct and return everything to the dust. Although the physical body could still exist after the spirit dissipated, it was already a different creature from the original body. Once it became a corpse, it would bring disaster to the human world. When people died and destroyed their corpses, they were responsible for others, and also responsible for themselves. How could the demon emperor not understand this principle? However, after this corpse swallowed the two fifth-level demons, its body became plump, and it vaguely resembled a human. Its face was vaguely recognizable, and it looked similar to the statues outside the demon emperor palace. Li Mu had no choice but to believe it. The demon corpses outside the demon palace, and the corpses in the stone coffins inside the palace all proved this point. Li Mu even suspected that the demon corpses were purposely left behind by someone. His goal was to deplete the spiritual power of those who entered here. In fact, to clear the demon corpses, their fulu, elixirs, and spiritual jades were almost depleted. The great battle in the demon palace had also depleted much of their spiritual power. Now that he thought about it, the treasures placed in the demonic emperor palace were more like bait than the inheritance that the white emperor had given to the younger generation of the demonic emperor. They were tempted to kill each other so that the stone coffin would absorb their flesh and blood, and awaken the sleeping corpses. If everything was as Li Mu guessed, then Emperor Bai was not a great demon with a demon heart, but an old silver coin from 3,000 years ago. Li Mu could not understand what Emperor Bai was after. Even if his corpse was resurrected, it wouldn't be him anymore. He had sacrificed so many of his subordinates to set up such a trap. What good would it do him? The demon race respected him as the demon emperor. For the past 3,000 years, they had been searching for his cave. However, after they went through all kinds of hardships and entered the demon emperor's cave, they met a group of dumplings the moment they landed. In the Demon Emperor's palace, there was even a super invincible dumpling waiting for them. This was a method of harming others without benefiting oneself. Anyone with a little bit of humanity and demonic nature would not do such a thing. All kinds of evidence proved that Demon Emperor Bai Di was most likely a lunatic with an antisocial personality. No matter how powerful he was when he was alive, he was now just a corpse without any humanity. After tasting flesh and blood, his ferocious nature was aroused. He let out a low roar and disappeared on the spot. Bang! A bear demon lowered his head and looked at his chest. A skinny claw reached out from his chest and grabbed a beating heart. The corpse only took a light breath, and this bear demon's blood essence and demon soul were sucked into his mouth. The remaining demons and demon sect members started to attack the gate of the Demon Emperor's palace frantically. In this small Demon Emperor's palace, they were like turtles in a jar. Sooner or later, they would become food for this demon corpse. This corpse was too powerful. Fifth realm demons could not fight back at all in his hands and had their souls and blood essence sucked away. If they continued to be trapped here, they would soon meet the same end. A few of the imperial court's high priests and disciples of the six sects gathered around Li Mu. Although a sixth realm demon was powerful, he was just a corpse and could not be a match for everyone here. However, this Demon Emperor's palace was too small and could not be used fully. It would be easy for this corpse to kill them one by one. If he hid in the coffin again, so many people could not do anything to him. They had to think of a way to escape first. Li Mu said decisively to everyone, "Everyone, attack this gate with all your might." Although everyone had tried to attack together just now, they were not forced to such an extent. Everyone was scheming against each other, and did not want to expend too much of their magic power. Once their magic power was exhausted, all their previous efforts would easily go to others. However, things were different now. If they did not do their best now, they would lose their lives later. Regardless of whether it was the demons or the demon sect, they were all attacking this gate with all their might. Rumble! Under the full attack of dozens of fifth realm powerhouses, the tightly shut gate of the Demon Emperor's palace finally shook. Dozens of brilliant spells flashed. A golden light flew out from Li Mu's sleeve and crashed into the gate of the Demon Emperor's palace. Rumble! The two gates of the Demon Emperor's palace collapsed. As if they had seen the dawn of hope, everyone in the palace flew out of the palace and came to the square in front of the Demon Emperor's palace. At this moment, the zombie in the Demon Emperor's palace had also finished absorbing the blood essence and soul of the bear demon. At this moment, his skin was even more lustrous. He no longer looked like a bag of bones, and his body had also become more plump. He licked his white fangs, and the bloodthirst in his eyes became even more intense. He slowly flew out of the palace. On the square, the various forces did not have a prior agreement. However, they all had a tacit understanding to work together to kill this zombie. As soon as the zombie flew out, dozens of magical lights landed on its body. At this moment, regardless of whether it was the six sects, the demon sect, or the subordinates of the demon kings, they all only had one goal: kill this zombie. Unfortunately, along the way, their fulu, elixirs, formation flags, and other powerful one-time use treasures had long been used up on those demon corpses. After the battle in the Demon Emperor's palace and the destruction of the gate, most of the magic power in their bodies had been used up. The power of the spells that they could use now was also weakened by more than half. Even so, the simultaneous attack of dozens of fifth realm powerhouses had the power to destroy heaven and earth. The zombie's body was instantly covered by the light of the dozens of spells. Even if everyone's dermic powers were almost depleted, even if the power of their dermic spells was not as strong as before, even if the demonic corpse had the strength of a sixth realm cultivator, when dozens of fifth realm cultivators joined forces, even a true sixth realm cultivator would have to retreat. Boom! The ground shook violently. The aftershock of the spells caused everyone to take a few steps back. When the dust settled, the zombie's clothes had already been torn into shreds. He leaned against the stone tablet in front of the Demon Emperor's palace. His aura was extremely weak, and there was not much corpse aura left on his body. Even an ordinary sixth realm powerhouse would have a high chance of dying after receiving such an attack. However, This zombie still had a breath of life left. However, there was nothing to be afraid of. At this moment, a bear demon finally could not hold it in any longer. He roared and charged forward. He said furiously, "Give me back my brother's life." Suddenly, a beam of light flashed across the huge statue at the entrance of the Demon Emperor's palace. A blinding ball of light flew out from the statue and rapidly flew into the zombie's body. The bear demon's expression changed, and he stopped abruptly in his tracks. However, after the ball of light flew into the zombie's body, there were no obvious changes to him. His eyes, which were already somewhat lively, fell into confusion instead. The bear demon gritted his teeth and raised a huge wolf fang club in his hand. He smashed it viciously at the zombie's head. However, in the next instant, he lowered his head and looked on helplessly as a withered hand pierced through his chest and ruthlessly crushed his still-beating heart. The bear demon's blood essence and demon soul were sucked into the zombie's mouth. This scene shocked the others who were watching from afar. The group's combined attack just now could even kill a sixth realm powerhouse. What kind of divine being was this zombie? It clearly only had a breath of life left, but it could still kill the bear demon in such a way. At this moment, everyone even felt that it was impossible to defeat this zombie. The only remaining wolf demon was already on the verge of breaking down. He looked at the zombie from afar and said in a trembling voice, "What kind of thing are you?" After the zombie swallowed the bear demon's blood essence and soul, his flesh and blood grew a little. He already looked somewhat like a human. The confusion in his eyes gradually disappeared. He stood in front of the Demon Emperor's palace and spoke for the first time. "I am Emperor Bai." Chapter 408. Everyone turned pale with fright at the zombie's words. The White Emperor was the sovereign of the demon race. He had passed down the teachings of the demon race and led the demon race to greater heights. He was the faith of many demon races. How could he be a demon that slaughtered them? The demon race could not believe it and could not accept it. Li Mu looked at the zombie with a puzzled expression. A zombie that had just gained consciousness was a new entity. It did not have any memories, nor did it know any language. It needed some time to learn before it could communicate with others. For example, Suhi's corpse. When she was born, she could only sense the connection with Suhi and still acted on instinct. Her true intelligence was not much higher than a 3-year-old child's, and she did not know any language. She still needed to observe and learn in the future. Under normal circumstances, this demon race would not know about the White Emperor, much less have such clear thoughts. Thinking of the ball of light that flew out of the statue, Li Mu's eyes narrowed. He asked, "You obtained the White Emperor's memories?" The zombie did not seem to be afraid to talk about this with Li Mu. It nodded. "You are very smart." For a moment, Li Mu didn't know what was in front of him. If he said he was the Demon Emperor White Emperor, he had already fallen 3,000 years ago. The zombie in front of him only had the White Emperor's body and memories. It was not the White Emperor from 3,000 years ago. But if he said he was not the White Emperor, his body was the White Emperor's body, and his memories were also the White Emperor's memories. If this was not the White Emperor, then who was? Li Mu felt that he had encountered a philosophical problem. When a person died and their memories were transplanted to a new body, was it a new life or a continuation of the original life? No, impossible. The Demon Emperor died long ago. You can't be the Demon Emperor. Don't think you can fool us. Although the Demon Emperor was powerful, he could not have lived for more than 3,000 years. If Li Mu was having a headache, the demon race present were already going crazy. How could they accept the rebirth of the Demon Emperor from 3,000 years ago, and the massacre of the Demon Clan? After the ball of light entered his body, the bloodthirsty aura disappeared from the zombie's body. After hearing the words of the demons, he was silent for a moment before muttering, "So it has already been 3,000 years." After saying this, he once again fell into a long silence. Li Mu could understand his feelings. This zombie had just been born. Although it already had self-awareness, it was a blank consciousness. After he had obtained Emperor Bai's memories, the emptiness in his consciousness had been filled by Emperor Bai's memories and experiences. His body and memories were all Emperor Bai's. In a way, he was Emperor Bai. However, Emperor Bai's memories were just memories. Memories had no consciousness, and he could not feel the passage of time. To the zombie that believed itself to be the White Emperor, this meant that it had only slept for a short while. When it opened its eyes, 3,000 years had already passed. Normal people might not be able to accept such a reality. Emperor Bai was indeed the demon emperor. He had once been a supreme expert. After a short moment of confusion, his eyes regained clarity and his expression gradually calmed down. He looked at Li Mu and asked, "Which is the most powerful country on the Zhu continent now? Is it still the Chu dynasty? How many generations have they passed down?" Li Mu looked at him and said calmly, "The Chu dynasty has been gone for 2,500 years. In these 2,500 years, the central mainland has changed 3 dynasties. Now the most powerful dynasty on the Zhu continent is called the Great Zhou." Emperor Bai's face showed a look of reminiscence. He muttered, "So those old guys from the Chu dynasty are also dead?" Li Mu nodded and said, "They've been dead for almost 3,000 years." His gaze swept across the crowd one by one, and he said to himself, "Which sect do you belong to?" Facing the demon emperor from 3,000 years ago, the elders of the 6 sects did not dare to slight him. Fulu School of Taoism, Danding Sect of Taoism, Xuanzong of Taoism, Northern Sect of Taoism. Emperor Bai pondered for a while and shook his head. Never heard of it. Taoism was born less than 2,000 years ago. It was normal that Emperor Bai had not heard of it. His eyes continued to wander. When he glanced at the people of Diabolism, he paused for a moment and said, "Are you from Diabolism?" The people of Diabolism bowed and said respectfully, "Greetings, Senior Emperor Bai." Emperor Bai finally looked at the few remaining demons and said, "Are you doubting my identity?" The demon race had always been stubborn. A bear demon gritted his teeth and said, "Even a demon emperor can't live for more than 3,000 years. Who the hell are you? How dare you pretend to be a demon emperor?" Emperor Bai glanced at him and said, "It's been 3,000 years. Your Shaking Bear clan is still as stupid as before. If I had known, I wouldn't have taught you demonic techniques back then. I would have let you all be beasts for all eternity." Perhaps because no one had spoken for 3,000 years, Emperor Bai was different from those experts who liked to put on airs. He was not stingy with his words. At first he stuttered a little, but soon his speech became smoother and clearer. He stood in front of the huge statue and said slowly, "That's right. Even I can't defeat the heavenly Tao. My lifespan is only 300 years. A melancholy expression appeared on his face as he continued, "But I can't accept it. I've cultivated for 300 years, 290 years, and obtained countless opportunities. It wasn't easy for me to cultivate to the heavenly demon realm. But my lifespan is only left with 10 years. I've tried countless methods, but I couldn't change it. I could only seal my body in a coffin before my lifespan ran out. I sealed my life's memories in a stone statue and left them for future rebirth. In this way, I could have a few hundred more years of lifespan." Li Mu's mouth opened slightly. He was stunned. Was he fighting a bug with the heavenly Tao? Lifespan was related to one's soul. Once the 300-year limit was up, even if he was reborn like the Thousand Illusions' venerable master, it would be useless. When the time came, his soul would still die. But the body was different. As long as it was preserved properly, the body could live forever. But this eternal life was useless. A body that could live forever had no consciousness. And when they gained consciousness, they would be bound by the heavenly Tao again, and enter the cycle of reincarnation again. Emperor Bai sealed his body and memories. When his body became a corpse, he would fuse it with his memories. The extra few hundred years of lifespan was the lifespan of the zombie. It could be said that the thing in front of Li Mu was Emperor Bai, but also not Emperor Bai. Emperor Bai's soul and consciousness had already died 3,000 years ago. There was no dispute about this. So it was not Emperor Bai, but the zombie had just been born. It only had consciousness, but it had no memories or experience. While it had Emperor Bai's body, it also had his memories. In its heart, it was Emperor Bai. It was not wrong to say that it was Emperor Bai. For the time being it was Emperor Bai. If this continued, Li Mu felt that he would go crazy. Emperor Bai's words shocked everyone present. They also did not expect that the demon emperor would be reborn in such a way. Everyone present was here to inherit Emperor Bai's treasures. Now that Emperor Bai was in front of them, the atmosphere was a little awkward. He was not dead. This was not an inheritance, but a robbery. In this way, whether it was the elixirs, Dharma treasures, or the heavenly tomes, they could not get them. A demon sect expert bowed and said, "We did not mean to disturb the demon emperor. Since the demon emperor has been reborn, can we leave now?" The others looked at him as if they were looking at an idiot. If they could leave so easily, what happened just now would not have happened. At this moment, they all understood that the demon corpses around the demon palace were not an accident. The demon emperor had planned this 3,000 years ago. His goal was to deplete the Dharma treasures and Dharma powers of those who entered the palace. The elixirs on the first floor, the Dharma treasures on the second floor, and the Tao page on the last floor were all for them to kill each other. As they continued to deplete everyone's Dharma powers, they provided nourishment for the zombie. If not for the fact that everyone's Dharma powers were depleted, the combined attack just now could have killed the zombie. He had spent so much effort to set up this trap. How could he let them leave? Emperor Bai looked at the tiger demon and smiled. "Since you are here, it must be fate. Can you borrow something from me before you leave?" The tiger demon looked at Emperor Bai's eyes and felt a little guilty. He asked, "What is it?" Emperor Bai said lightly, "I want to borrow your essence, blood and soul." The tiger demon's face was first filled with fear. Then he realized something. He glared at Emperor Bai and said, "You are already at the end of your rope. What right do you have to say that?" After withstanding the combined attack just now, no matter how strong the zombie was, it was severely injured. Anyone here could have killed it completely. Just now, everyone was stunned by his words. After calming down, it was easy for them to figure out that even if he used to be a demon emperor, he was now just a heavily injured demon corpse. Emperor Bai looked at him and shook his head. "Junior of the tiger tribe, you might have forgotten where this place is. Stop pretending." The tiger demon roared. As if to boost his courage, he controlled the two mountain-splitting axes and chopped at Emperor Bai's head. As long as Emperor Bai was alive, they could not be at ease. Clang! The two mountain-splitting axes clashed, creating a series of sparks. However, Emperor Bai was nowhere to be seen. Behind the tiger demon, a figure appeared out of nowhere. Emperor Bai opened his mouth and bit into the tiger demon's neck with his white fangs. In an instant, the essence, blood and demon soul in his body were sucked dry. Emperor Bai threw the tiger demon's corpse on the ground. After absorbing the tiger demon, Emperor Bai's face became redder. His body became fuller, and even a few strands of hair grew out. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the crowd again. He mumbled, "I am not satisfied with my current body. With all of you, it should be enough." Chapter 409. Another bear demon was killed. Even though Emperor Bai looked extremely weak, no one would think that he was truly at the end of his rope. His companion died tragically. Another tiger demon from the demon sect shouted, "Everyone attack together. I don't believe he can take another attack." Everyone was silent. The next moment, countless rays of Dharma spells lit up and engulfed Emperor Bai. At this point, no one cared about using up their Dharma powers. If they did not kill the demon corpse in front of them, they would be the ones to die. However, this time, Emperor Bai did not just stand there and take the attacks. His body disappeared. When he reappeared, he was behind another bear demon. His sharp nails pierced into the bear demon's body. In an instant, the bear demon turned into a dried corpse and fell to the ground. Another dozen or so attacks came, and Emperor Bai's figure disappeared mysteriously once again. At the same time, Li Mu felt a chill run down his spine. All the hair on his body stood on end, and he smelled a thick corpse aura. The next moment, Emperor Bai appeared behind him. His sharp black nails pierced towards his body. A golden light shot out from Li Mu's body and bounced Emperor Bai far away. Although he was not injured, Li Mu's face darkened. This corpse was obviously severely injured, but it could still teleport. If this continued, no one would be able to attack it. Sooner or later, they would become its food. He took out a fulu without hesitation and activated it with his Dharma powers. A golden-armored soldier holding a giant sword appeared in the void. When the 6th realm golden-armored soldier appeared, the space was still stable and showed no signs of collapsing. Looking at Emperor Bai's figure, Li Mu's guess was confirmed. Due to the protection of the flask space, 6th realm cultivators could not enter without an owner. At this moment, the newly born zombie obtained Emperor Bai's memories and his inheritance. From now on, the cave abode had an owner. However, this was not good news. Because the owner of the flask space was no different from a god in his own space. The golden-armored soldier waved his giant sword and slashed at Emperor Bai's body. Emperor Bai's body disappeared. The giant sword missed. Seeing this, Huanji hesitated for a moment before taking out a black jade talisman and crushing it. A thick black aura gushed out of the jade talisman and formed a demon soul with 2 horns on its head. Its body also exuded the aura of a 6th-stage cultivator. Under Huanji's command, the demon soul flew towards Emperor Bai. At the same time, the giant sword of the golden-armored soldier slashed down again. The monster soul released by Huanji suddenly disappeared. The next time it appeared, it was already under the golden-armored godly soldier's giant sword. With a slash of the sword, the demonic soul was split into 2. Although it quickly merged back together, the demonic soul had become much more illusory, and its aura had also withered. Within a short period of time, the last 2 demons from the monster sect had died at the hands of Emperor Bai. At this moment, Emperor Bai's face was rosy and his hair had grown out. Other than the corpse aura on his body, he looked no different from an ordinary person. His originally weak aura also became stronger once again. At that moment, everyone was in despair. Emperor Bai was undefeatable in this space. After killing these demons, Emperor Bai finally turned his gaze towards the elders of the 6 sections. His figure disappeared once again. Li Mu used his mind, and the Dao Bell flew out. It suddenly enlarged and covered Li Mu, the elders of the 6 sects, and the few imperial consecrators. Dong. A buzzing sound came from the Dao Bell. Emperor Bai's figure appeared but was blocked outside the Dao Bell. He stretched out his claws and stabbed at the Dao Bell, but his nails were broken. Although they grew back quickly, he could not do anything to the Dao Bell. Immediately after, he started to cast a series of powerful spells. However, he could only make the Dao Bell ring but could not enter the bell. Suddenly, as if he had discovered something, Emperor Bai's figure distorted and turned into a wisp of green smoke. Li Mu's expression changed slightly. The jade bottle that he had snatched from Huanji at the 2nd level of the monster palace appeared in his hand. He didn't even think about it before crushing the jade bottle. The remaining crack on the Dao Bell suddenly emitted a golden light. The last crack finally disappeared. Li Mu originally did not want to obtain the jade bottle, but he could feel the Dao Bell's desire for it. According to his guess, the bottle should contain Genesis Chi that could help repair the Dao Bell. With this Genesis Chi, the Dao Bell was finally complete again. At the original crack, the light smoke turned back into Emperor Bai's figure. He looked at the people inside the Dao Bell with some reluctance and flew towards the 3 people from the Soul Sect. The 3 soul cultivators wanted to escape, but there was nowhere to run. In a few breaths, their souls were sucked into Emperor Bai's stomach. At this point, the 4 monster kings had suffered heavy losses. The people from the Demon Path's Soul Sect and Monster Path's Demon Path's Soul Sect had been completely wiped out. Only the people from the Illusion Sect and Meizong Sect beside Huanji were safe, but only temporarily. Li Mu's golden armor soldiers and Huanji's demon soul could not get close to Emperor Bai at all. As long as they were within 10 feet of Emperor Bai, he would teleport them far away. They could not even touch the corner of his clothes. Both of them had a time limit. It would not be long before they disappeared. Li Mu could not allow Emperor Bai to continue killing. Even though he was on a different side from Huanji and the others, if they all died, it would be his turn to die. While Emperor Bai caught 2 more demons and absorbed their essence blood, Li Mu controlled the Dao Bell to cover the rest of the people. Huanji silently lowered her head and fell silent. It was easy to take revenge, but difficult to repay kindness. This was the consensus of the Heavenly Fox clan. It was also the experience passed down by the ancestors of the Heavenly Fox clan. Although she did not want to accept Li Mu's kindness, they were all in the same boat now. If they wanted to live, they had to put aside all their grievances and work together to deal with their only enemy. Li Mu looked at Huanji and said, "What other trump cards do you have? Take them out. If not, we will all be trapped here." Huanji thought for a while and took out a jade talisman. She said, "We cannot send messages in the flask space, but this talisman contains a drop of my essence blood. If we crush this talisman, even if we are outside the flask space, the mother talisman in my brother's hands will sense it. He will know that we are in danger." Li Mu asked, "So what if your brother knows?" Huanji said, "My brother is the great elder of Meizong sect. He is outside now." Li Mu understood what Huanji meant. Although they could not tell the people outside what happened, as long as they knew that Huanji was in danger, the dozens of level 6 experts outside would work together to open up the space again. By then, even if Emperor Bai had 3 heads and 6 arms, he would not be able to fight against so many experts. Within the Dao Bell, Huanji crushed the jade talisman without hesitation. Outside the Demon Emperor's cave, in the valley, a handsome man was sitting cross-legged. His expression suddenly changed, and he stood up abruptly. The great elder of Meizong sect asked, "What happened?" The man said, "Huanji is in danger." He said without hesitation, "Open up the space." The great elder of Meizong sect, King Qingguang, and the expert from Meizong sect flew up at the same time. This fox from Meizong sect was the son of the Heaven Lord of Illusions. The Heaven Lord of Illusions had an important position in the entire Demon Dao. This operation was led by Meizong sect. The 4 demon kings also floated in the air. The Taoist sect and the Great Zhou court had joined forces. In order to balance the powers, they had temporarily formed an alliance with the Demon Dao. The 8 of them gathered their dermic powers at one point. A hole gradually tore open in the void. A powerful aura that surpassed level 5 experts emanated from the hole. When they felt the aura, their expressions changed at the same time. How can there be level 6 experts? What a strong corpse aura. Someone from corpse sect has sneaked in. But why is the space still stable? On the opposite side, the sloppy Taoist priest also stood up and said angrily, "Damn it. You Demon Dao are indeed unscrupulous. You actually secretly let level 6 experts in." The great elder of Meizong sect said angrily, "Bullsh *t. I think you are the ones who are unscrupulous." Everyone knew that this kind of ownerless space could only allow those below level 6 to enter. Although they also wanted to sneak in secretly, it was impossible. It must be the doing of those people on the opposite side. Just as everyone was confused, the space that they had painstakingly torn open began to rapidly heal and soon disappeared. At this time they finally discovered something unusual. Did something happen inside? Let's attack together. Everyone attacked together, wanting to tear open the space again. However, this time, other than the heaven and earth power becoming extremely chaotic at the place where their dermic powers converged, no other strange phenomena appeared. How is this possible? The Demon Emperor's cave abode is not here. How can an ownerless space move by itself? Could it be that it is not the Demon Emperor's cave abode, but a space with a master? The handsome man's face was full of worry. Hian Jinko's expression changed greatly. Li Mu represented the future of Fulu School. If something happened to him here, how would he explain it to the headmaster and the Grand Supreme Elder? The sloppy Taoist priest slapped his thigh and said bitterly, "It's over. My heavenly secret talisman is finished." Everyone's expression was uncertain. The art of flashing heaven was an upper realm dermic art. The level 7 dermic art could only be used to create storage dermic treasures and open up a small space. To open up a small space outside of the main space required even more strength. What a space with a master meant was self-evident. Could it be that they had accidentally broken into the cave abode of a powerhouse? The sloppy Taoist priest shook his head and said, "Impossible. If that really is a space with a master, We can't open the entrance with just us. They must have encountered other dangers. That strong corpse chi just now. Could it be that the ancient corpses in the Demon Emperor's cave abode had turned into spirits? Hyun Jinko said. Let's not care about the reason for now. Let's think of a way to save them first. He remembered that the Dao Bell was with Li Mu. He should be able to protect himself for a short period of time. However, as time passed, it was hard to say. At that moment, in the Demon Emperor's cave abode, everyone stood within the Dao Bell and watched as the crack in the sky gradually closed under Baidi's control. Despair gradually appeared on their faces. This was the White Emperor's cave abode. Here he could use more than 100% of his strength. As for them, they were like turtles in a jar. The Dao sect elders could still maintain their composure. One of the worshippers looked at Li Mu worriedly and asked, Lordly, what should we do now? Li Mu sighed softly and said, Don't worry. You won't be able to break in for a while. Even a level 7 dermic art could not do anything to the complete Dao Bell. As long as Baidi's strength had not fully recovered, he could not do anything to them. Although the thing outside had received Baidi's inheritance, in essence he was just a slightly more powerful zombie. His strength would not exceed level 6 dermic art. If not for the fact that there was no power of heaven and earth in this space, Li Mu could not use his Dao techniques. He could suppress this zombie alone. After realizing that he could not break through the defense of the bell, Baidi gave up on attacking. He turned and walked into the Demon Emperor Palace. When he walked out again, he had changed his clothes and tied up his hair. At that moment, he was no different from the statue. He stood outside the bell and asked indifferently, Which one of you took my things? Everyone looked around with a blank expression on their faces. At first, their target was the heavenly book. They did not care about anything else at all. Later, everyone was running for their lives. How could they care about anything else? Li Mu looked at Huan Ji and asked, Did you take something from him? Huan Ji's face darkened as she said coldly, No. Baidi looked at them indifferently and said, I am not in a hurry. Everything here will be mine sooner or later. Li Mu said, Don't say I. You are not Baidi. Baidi is already dead. You are just a consciousness born from his corpse. Baidi said, I am. Li Mu said firmly, No, you are not. Baidi said in a low voice, I am Demon Emperor Baidi. Li Mu's interest was piqued. This zombie was far more stubborn than he had imagined. He thought for a while and said, All right, Demon Emperor. Can you answer a question for me? Baidi did not agree, but he did not reject either. He looked at Li Mu. Li Mu looked at him and asked slowly, If there is a ship that can sail on the sea for 3,000 years, as long as one of the planks on the ship is broken, it will be taken down and replaced with a new one. One day, when all the planks on the ship have been replaced, will it still be the same ship? Baidi said indifferently, Of course not. Li Mu continued to ask, Then when did it stop being the same? Baidi opened his mouth. He wanted to say something, but he did not say anything. After thinking carefully about this person's question, he was confused. Chapter 410. Outside the Dao Bell, the White Emperor fell silent. Li Mu looked at him and urged, What's wrong with you? Say something. The White Emperor thought for a long time and said, I am the Demon Emperor. No, you are not. No, I am. Li Mu looked into his eyes and said seriously, Logically speaking, you are just a corpse. You should have your own person. Living as a corpse, you are unique. You should not be held hostage by the White Emperor's memories. This will make you lose yourself. Oh, do you know what yourself is? The White Emperor did not answer. After looking at Li Mu, he turned and left. Talking to this human would make him frustrated, and even cause him to doubt himself. He did not like this feeling. He stopped talking to them and sat cross-legged at the entrance of the demon palace, closing his eyes to rest. The White Emperor's demonic corpse avoided talking. Li Mu's plan to reason with him had failed. Li Mu and the rest could only stay in the Dao Bell. After obtaining the White Emperor's memories and becoming the owner of the cave abode, this corpse was undefeatable here. At least to Li Mu and the rest, it was undefeatable. Of course, he could not break through the Dao Bell's defense. However, if this continued, Li Mu and the rest would still be at a disadvantage. The other party was essentially a corpse. It could not eat, drink, or sleep for decades. But Li Mu was different from the elders of the six sects, Huanji, and the demons. Their physical bodies were living bodies. When cultivators reached their level, they could completely abstain from eating and drinking. However, the prerequisite was that there was spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Only by drawing spiritual qi of heaven and earth into their bodies could they preserve their physical bodies. But there was nothing here. With the remaining spiritual power in their bodies, they could abstain from eating for months. After a few months, their physical bodies would die, leaving only their primordial spirits. He Lu Hanyan and Li Qing would truly be separated by yin and yang. At that time, he would truly become one with Su He. Speaking of Su He, he did not know where she was now. If she knew that he had become a ghost, would she be sad or happy? He could also possess another body and be reborn like the Thousand Illusions' venerable master, but that was not the ending Li Mu wanted. Li Mu scanned the area. There was still a bear and a snake left. If necessary, he could use the emergency measure and roast them. As for the snake demon, he could forget about it. If he roasted it, how could Li Mu face Brother Bai and his two nieces in the future? As for the bear, its body was riddled with scars and some parts had already turned black. It was obvious that it had been poisoned by corpse poison. There was a high chance that it wouldn't survive. There was no spiritual energy in this space, not even the power of heaven and earth. It was a completely dead place. None of the methods that he used to escape with his life would work. Li Mu continued to think. Suddenly, there was a low roar in his ears. He opened his eyes and saw the bear demon curled up on the ground in extreme pain. Seeing the bear demon, many people from the Meizong and Mirage sects immediately cried out in fear. He's been poisoned by corpse poison. This corpse poison is very strong. It can't be dispelled with spiritual power. The demon sect was poisoned to death. We have to get rid of him quickly before he turns into a zombie. Otherwise, all of us will be in trouble. All the demon corpses in the Demon Emperor cave abode were ancient corpses that were 3,000 years old. The corpse poison couldn't be compared to ordinary zombies. Even the primordial spirit and demon soul couldn't escape the attack. If he was at the peak of his spiritual power, he might be able to dispel it with great effort. However, after going through several battles, all the humans and demons here were on the verge of overdrawing their spiritual power. Once they were poisoned and couldn't get rid of it, they could only wait for death. The bear demon's face was full of pain and his eyes were filled with despair. Finally, he seemed to have made a decision. He stretched out his hand and slapped the bear demon's head. However, his bare paw didn't fall. Phantom Princess stopped him. With a cold face, she said in a deep voice, "Demon cultivation is so difficult. Are you going to give up just like that?" The bear demon's body was already emitting a thick corpse aura. However, there was still a trace of rationality in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said with difficulty, I'm hopeless. Kill me. I don't want to become that kind of thing." Phantom Princess didn't say anything. She just channeled the spiritual power in her body into his body. However, the corpse poison was too strong. Her spiritual power couldn't get rid of it. Li Mu watched from afar. Although Phantom Princess wasn't very friendly to humans, she was really good to the demon race. Seeing that her spiritual power was useless, Phantom Princess was silent for a moment. Her palm gradually emitted a golden light. Li Mu was really shocked this time. She was a demon. She actually knew Buddhism? He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It was really good to have a seventh realm father. Phantom Princess had endless treasures. Many of them were precious things that even he didn't have. She could also cultivate both demon and Buddhism. This meant that the Buddhism that countered the demon race was useless against her. She had turned the demon race's weakness into her strength. She was young, but her cultivation wasn't low. She also cultivated both demon and Buddhism. She had treasures one after another. This was a true demon's second generation. although this was the white deity cave abode, and the demon corpse was at the peak of the flying zombie realm, comparable to the 6th level, it would be countered by the Dharma. If Li Mu could use the Dharma powers of the 5th level, he might be able to defeat her. Li Mu looked at Phantom Princess and asked, "Do you want to work together?" Phantom Princess's eyes flashed and she asked, "How?" Li Mu leaned over and whispered a few words into her ear. Phantom Princess was stunned and then frowned. "You want my primordial spirit to possess your body?" Li Mu was surprised. "You've cultivated your primordial spirit?" Demons did not cultivate their primordial spirits, as they had their own cultivation methods. They did not cultivate their souls or condense their souls. Since Phantom Princess managed to condense her demon soul into a primordial spirit, it meant that other than Demon Buddha, she also cultivated Taoist techniques. Phantom Princess did not answer directly and only said, "Is there any other way?" Li Mu nodded. "Yes." Phantom Princess quickly asked, "What other way?" Li Mu said, "Or I can possess your body." Phantom Princess said decisively, "Don't even think about it." Li Mu looked at her and said, "If not for the fact that there is no other way, do you think I would want you to do it?" Being possessed was a big taboo for cultivators. Li Mu knew that Phantom Princess would not agree to him being possessed, so he did not even mention it. As for himself, it was not the first time he was possessed, so he was not that against it. In this kind of matter, he had given his first opportunity to Su He, and then he had given it to her a few more times. After that, he had given it to the Empress, but that was under the circumstances where Li Mu already had great trust in him and the others. Li Mu naturally did not have much trust in Phantom Princess, but there was nothing he could do about it. There were only 3 choices in front of him. Either Phantom Princess possessed his body, or he possessed Phantom Princess. Or the 2 of them could continue to wait in the bell until the demon corpse changed its mind and let them out. After making this decision, Li Mu struggled intensely in his heart before finally convincing himself. Anyway, it was not the first time. He had been possessed by ghosts and humans before, so it did not matter if there was a fox. Although this kind of thinking was somewhat self-destructive and hopeless, there was really no better way at the moment. Phantom Princess lowered her head and bit her lips, as if she was going through a decision in her heart. Her primordial spirit entering someone else's body was something that she could not accept. What's more, this person was her enemy. But when she thought of Li Mu's primordial spirit entering her body, she instantly felt that this matter was not so difficult to accept. She finally looked at Li Mu, gritted her teeth and said, "Tell me your plan." Li Mu, "I need to borrow your Buddhist power." After a while, Phantom Princess asked, "Are you sure?" Li Mu, "Let's try it first. If it doesn't work, we can hide in here again. Anyway, you won't lose anything." Phantom Princess pondered for a long time and nodded. "Okay." Li Mu's right hand emitted a golden light and said, "In order to show my sincerity, I will treat your injuries first." Phantom Princess lowered her head and slowly reached out her hand to Li Mu. In the Demon Emperor's cave, Li Mu and Phantom Princess reached an agreement about joining forces. When they began to discuss the details, outside the Demon Emperor's cave, a huge wave had already set off. Previously, when they besieged Li Mu, they had lost a lot of Demon Dao experts. Even Soul Sect's first elder, Nether Saint, had fallen. This time, in order to obtain the Heavenly Book and the Demon Emperor's inheritance, Soul Sect, Demon Sect, Mirage Sect, and Maisong Sect had sent out dozens of experts, but none of them had returned. Including the daughter of Illusion Lord, they were all trapped in the Demon Emperor's cave. After receiving the news, Illusion Lord had already ended his seclusion in advance and left Maisong Sect. No one knew where he went. At the same time, all the Demon Dao experts had received an order to immediately report to the subsect if there was any news about the Demon Emperor's cave. North County, Bayun Mountain. The Fulu School's master's disciple acceptance ceremony would be held soon. These days, many elders of other sects had already come to Bayun Mountain to congratulate. But at this time, the Fulu School's master, Xianjizi, had not shown up. After asking, they found out that he was no longer in the mountain. Shindu. In Baichuan Academy, Two middle-aged men who were playing chess suddenly raised their heads at the same time and looked at the sky in shock. What happened? His Majesty actually left Shindu? The Emperor left the palace. What nonsense! In Changle Palace, Mr. May sighed and put away the worry on his face. He said, "Send an order to all the officials. His Majesty is in seclusion to cultivate. He doesn't need to attend tomorrow's morning court. When he needs to attend the court, let us know." Chapter 411. Demon Emperor Cave. Li Mu sat cross-legged inside the Dao Bell, shaking his head and sighing. It took 3,000 years to give birth to its own consciousness, but it has to live for someone else. It can't be its true self. How sad, how regretful. As a person, a corpse, it doesn't even have its own thoughts. What's the use of giving birth to its own consciousness? If it was me, I'd rather die. Some corpses might as well lie down for another 3,000 years and live as someone else for a few hundred years. What's the point? It's so comfortable lying down. Li Mu seemed to be talking to himself, but his voice penetrated the Dao Bell and resounded throughout the entire Demon Emperor Cave. At the entrance of the Demon Emperor Palace, the White Emperor corpse sat cross-legged. Although its eyes were closed, the corners of its eyes were twitching, and its aura was fluctuating. Li Mu sensed this change and struck while the iron was hot. He looked at Illusion Princess and asked, "Fox, what's the difference between this and possession?" Illusion Princess glared at him and gritted her teeth. "Don't call me Fox. Li Mu. Be careful next time." Illusion Princess took a deep breath and looked at the White Emperor corpse. She replied to Li Mu, "Of course there's a difference. A person who is being possessed knows how to resist and willingly let himself be possessed. I've never seen such a stupid person. He's not a person to begin with. He's a corpse. Even a corpse wouldn't be so stupid." Inside the Law Bell, everyone watched as Li Mu and Huan Ji sang the same tune and sighed inwardly. They were trapped in the Dao Bell by the White Emperor corpse, so they could only talk and comfort themselves. At the entrance of the Demon Emperor Palace, the Demon Emperor corpse listened to the conversation between Li Mu and Illusion Princess. He felt his heart becoming more and more chaotic. He couldn't take it anymore and sealed his hearing. Although he couldn't hear the voices of the couple, there were still two voices arguing in his heart. One voice said, "You are White Emperor. Your body is his body. Your memories are his memories. You are Demon Emperor, White Emperor." The other voice retorted, "White Emperor is already dead. He died 3,000 years ago. You are not him. He forced these new memories onto you. You are the White Emperor. You are not the White Emperor." There seemed to be two consciousnesses in his sea of consciousness. The two consciousnesses kept arguing about who he was, and neither could convince the other. The demonic corpse finally couldn't hold it in any longer and said angrily, "Shut up." Inside the Law Bell, Li Mu raised his chin and asked Huan Ji, "Who is he talking to?" Phantom Princess shook her head. "I don't know." Then she looked at Li Mu and asked, "Is it time?" Li Mu looked at the demonic corpse that was beginning to mumble and said in a low voice, "Wait a little longer." Huan Ji thought about it, and a jade thumb ring appeared in her hand. She handed it over to Li Mu. Li Mu asked, "What is this?" Huan Ji said, "It can store spiritual energy and spiritual energy, allowing everyone here to send their spiritual energy in. If we wear it, we can use the spiritual energy within at any time. Our chances will be higher." Li Mu did not take it immediately and asked suspiciously, "Is this another scheme of yours?" Huan Ji snorted coldly. "Take it or leave it." The moment before she put it away, Li Mu snatched it from her and said, "You'd better wear it. It's safer to wear it." As a fox, although Huan Ji was cunning and scheming, she was not stupid. At this time, if she still set a trap for Li Mu, the word stupid would not be enough to describe her. Li Mu passed the thumb ring to one of the consecrators and asked them to take turns to transfer their mana into the ring. No one had any objections to this. They also knew that whether or not everyone here could escape and survive depended on Li Mu. While waiting, Li Mu continued to ask Huan Ji, "What other good things do you have? Take them all out. If you don't take them out now, You might not have a chance in the future. Huan Ji thought about it and took out a jade bottle. Li Mu asked, "What is this?" Huan Ji said, "Some heaven and earth power is sealed in the bottle. It can be used at a crucial moment." Li Mu took the bottle from behind and said unhappily, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" 10,000 Illusion God Lord was more thoughtful than him. Li Mu did not expect that Monster Emperor's cave would not have heaven and earth power. If he knew, he would have asked the Empress to seal a few bottles for him. Then he wouldn't be in such a bad state. Huan Ji snorted coldly and said, "Why should I tell you this? Am I close to you?" Li Mu continued to ask, "What else is there?" Huan Ji obviously had a bottle of heaven and earth space. She didn't want to talk to Li Mu and poured out a bunch of things. Li Mu's eyes lit up. He knew that his chance had come. This was actually another rich woman. He loved such rich women the most. Li Mu looked at these treasures and kept talking. "There are so many spirit jades. Why didn't you take them out just now? This string of Buddha beads is a good treasure. It might be useful later. This pill has a strong medicinal fragrance. It will definitely be good for recovering magic power. I'll take it first." Huan Ji was indeed a second-generation demon. The pile of treasures dazzled Li Mu. Li Mu finally looked at a white, furry thing and asked, "What is this?" Huan Ji picked up the item and shook her wrist. The originally soft tail immediately became hard and straight like a sharp sword. The flow of spiritual power on it was not inferior to Li Mu's Qingxian sword. This was obviously a top-grade magic treasure. At this time, Huan Ji said indifferently, "The black fox tail is a treasure of my clan. It is useless to you." Li Mu took the black fox tail from her hand and said, "Take it first. If my weapon is damaged, I have a replacement." Now that they had a common enemy, Huan Ji did not think too much. She only said, "I've already taken out everything. What about you?" Li Mu looked at her and said, "Young mistress, do you think that everyone is like you and has a seventh realm father? I've already used up my things when I destroyed those demon corpses. Otherwise, why would I ask you for them? I'm not that kind of shameless person." The ring that stored magic power circled around in everyone's hands and returned to Li Mu's hand. Everyone present, whether it was the elders of the sixth sex or the disciples of the demon sex, were all willing to transfer most of their remaining magic power into it. Li Mu was still waiting for an opportunity to continue singing the same tune as Huan Ji. What a pity, what a pity. What's the point of living like this? Might as well continue to be an emotionless corpse. Next, Li Mu saw some strange changes in the White Emperor Demon Corpse's body. He no longer responded to Li Mu and Huan Ji. He sat cross-legged at the entrance of the Demon Emperor Palace and began to talk to himself frequently. It was as if he was suffering from schizophrenia. The corpse aura on his body was sometimes stable and sometimes chaotic, sometimes high and sometimes low. At a certain moment, when the corpse's aura weakened again, Li Mu looked at Huan Ji and said, "It's time." Huan Ji bit her lower lip lightly. After taking a deep breath, her gaze became firm. A shadow floated out of her body and entered Li Mu's body. Li Mu stood up silently and walked out of the Dao Bell. Inside the Dao Bell, everyone's gazes were on him. The White Emperor Demon Corpse was still meditating at the entrance of the Demon Emperor Palace. Under the control of the sword technique, the Qingxian sword shone with a bright green light and pierced towards the Demon Corpse's head. The Demon Corpse's eyes suddenly opened. A blood-red light flashed in his eyes. He stretched out his hands and used his palms to hold the sword. The Qingxian sword could not move an inch further. A moment later, his figure disappeared from the spot. At the same time, behind Li Mu, a black shadow appeared out of thin air. His 10 fingers were like lightning. His black nails pierced through the air and pierced towards Li Mu's neck. At this moment, a blinding golden light exploded from Li Mu's body. Qi like cold water being poured on a hot rock. The demon corpse's body, which was harder than magic treasures, was immediately burned by the golden light. The demon corpse let out an angry roar and wanted to teleport away. However, he realized that the space here was also affected by the golden light. He could not teleport at all. His body quickly retreated, trying to escape from the golden light. This world is no longer the world he knows. Be yourself or be someone else. Which will you choose? With the support of spiritual power, his voice echoed in the cave abode. The demon corpse hugged his head and growled. I am the White Emperor. I am not the White Emperor. I am the White Emperor. No, I am not the White Emperor. The boat is no longer the boat. I am not the White Emperor. Damn it, get out of my body. Get out of my body. He roared at the sky. The corpse aura on his body suddenly exploded. A ball of light was forced out of his body. After the ball of light left his body, the demon corpse suddenly quieted down. Confusion appeared in his eyes. He muttered, Who am I? Soon the confusion faded. He no longer had the memories of the White Emperor. Looking at Li Mu, his mind was filled with the thousands of sword shadows and the torturous wind and thunder. At this moment, the golden light emitted by this human made him feel uneasy and disgusted. The demon corpse looked up at the sky. Suddenly, he flew up and tore open space, revealing another azure sky. He jumped out of the space crack. The crack quickly closed. The demon emperor's cave abode was silent. It was easy to leave the heavenly flask cave abode. However, it was impossible for him to enter by himself. He ran away? The demon corpse left? We are safe. Inside the Dao Bell, everyone was cheering. Li Mu kept the ball of light without leaving a trace. Then he put away the Dao Bell and forced Huanji's primordial spirit out of her body. Huanji's primordial spirit returned to her body. She stared at Li Mu and gritted her teeth. You took the heavenly book? Li Mu waved his hand and said, Don't listen to that guy's nonsense. I was the first to leave. How could I have taken it? Huanji gritted her teeth and looked at him. She said in a low voice, Return my treasures to me. Li Mu looked at her and asked curiously, Treasures? What treasures? Huanji was stunned. She looked at the thumb ring on Li Mu's hand. A white light flashed and the thumb ring on Li Mu's hand disappeared. Huanji raised her head and looked at Li Mu. She said seriously, Although I am not human, you are not human either. Li Mu's face didn't turn red and his heart didn't skip a beat. He had never forgotten that Phantom Princess was his enemy. There was no need to be polite with his enemy. Moreover, if it was not for him, Huanji would have died at least twice. She even possessed his body and took advantage of him. It was only right for him to take some benefits from her. Looking at Huanji's disdainful eyes, Li Mu said, I saved you twice. Is this how the heavenly fox race treats its benefactor? Okay. Huanji seemed to have thought it through. She said, I don't want those things anymore. Just take it as the reward for saving me. From now on, I don't owe you anything. Li Mu looked at her and shook his head. As the daughter of a heavenly lord, is your life only worth those things? Doesn't your conscience hurt when you say that we don't owe each other anything? Huanji said angrily. Li Mu said, What about you? If you want to think like that, I can't do anything about it. Anyway, I'm not asking you to repay me. What about the heavenly fox race repaying kindness? That's all. Huanji's face turned red. Her chest heaved up and down. After a while, she stretched out her hands. 2 short swords appeared in her hands. She gritted her teeth and said, I'll kill you first and then kill myself. Once we die, our enmity will be erased. Li Mu walked to the front of everyone and said, The demon emperor's cave has no owner now. Everyone cast your spells and leave this place. Demon Nation on a mountain peak. There was a fluctuation in space. Dozens of figures appeared out of thin air. Breathing in the fresh air and feeling the vitality of the surrounding plants and animals, everyone had a look of relief on their faces. They had never felt that a world with plants and animals was so beautiful. That dead space had left an indelible shadow on them. The demon corpse had disappeared. No one knew where it went. In the distant sky, a stream of light suddenly streaked across. A middle-aged man appeared in front of everyone. This man did not have any spiritual power fluctuations. He looked like a mortal, but a mortal could not cross such a long distance in an instant. The only explanation was that his cultivation was much higher than everyone present. When Huanji saw the middle-aged man, she flew into his arms and cried. Li Mu's expression changed. He was very familiar with the aura of this man. Cui Ming had this aura when he was possessed by the 10,000 illusion Heaven Lord's clone. Without a doubt, the man in front of him was Huanji's father, the master of the Demon Path's Mirage sect and Meizong sect. He was the former Grand Elder of the Mirage sect, the 10,000 illusion Heaven Lord. If he knew that this person was nearby, he would have treated Huanji better. Unfortunately, it was all too late. The middle-aged man looked at Huanji with heartache and asked, "My dear daughter, what's wrong? Who bullied you?" Huanji wiped her tears and pointed at Li Mu. At this moment, Li Mu felt that he was locked on by an extremely powerful aura. A chill rushed from his tailbone to the back of his head. His body and mind seemed to be frozen at this moment. Not only was his body unable to move, but even his mind stopped working. This was the first time Li Mu truly experienced the power of the seventh realm. Although he was with the Empress every day, he had never seen the Empress display her full strength. This was the most dangerous moment Li Mu had ever encountered. At this moment, his life was completely controlled by someone else. However, this feeling of being at the mercy of others only lasted for a moment. In the next moment, Li Mu regained control of his body and mind. A figure appeared in front of him. Chapter 412. The middle-aged man looked at Zhou Yi with surprise, the Empress of the Great Zhou. Zhou Yi looked at him indifferently and said coldly, "Old fox." The two looked at each other and didn't do anything else. The clouds above everyone's head suddenly dispersed. There was no killing intent on the mountain peak, but every step was filled with killing intent. The 10,000 illusion lord looked at the Empress with a hint of fear in his eyes. "You actually came personally?" The 10,000 illusion lord looked at Huanji and said, "I only have one daughter. For my precious daughter, I naturally have to come." Zhou Yi said, "He's my subject. For my subject, why can't I come?" As soon as she finished speaking, a stream of light flashed across the horizon. Another figure instantly arrived. Xianjizi looked at Li Mu and asked, "Junior brother, are you all right?" Li Mu smiled and said, "I'm fine." Xianjizi. 10,000 illusion lord. Xianjizi and the 10,000 illusion lord looked at each other. The latter's gaze swept across Xianjizi and the Empress. He waved his sleeve and swept up Huanji and the others, saying, "Let's go." Seeing them turn into streams of light and leave, the Empress and Xianjizi didn't stop them. Between transcending realm experts, unless there was a huge difference in strength, they wouldn't easily start a fight. Even if it was 1 against 2, it would be difficult to determine the victor. For the others present, it was a disaster. In the sky, the 10,000 illusion lord asked Huanji, "What happened?" Huanji lowered her head and said, "The demonic emperor's inheritance was a scam. It was a trap set up by emperor by 3,000 years ago. His goal was to lure living people in, and use their essence blood to revive his demonic corpse. All of us almost died in the hands of that demonic corpse." The 10,000 illusion lord asked again, "Did you get the heavenly book?" Huanji shook her head and said, "It should have fallen into Li Mu's hands." The Lord of Illusions said regretfully, "What a pity. If not for the Empress of the Great Zhou and the headmaster of the Fulu school, Xianjizi, who obtained that page of the heavenly book, we would have been able to lead the demon race and restore the glory of the demon race." Huanji asked, "Why didn't father snatch the heavenly book back?" The Lord of Illusions shook his head and said, "Not to mention Xianjizi, even if the Empress of the Great Zhou was alone, I would not snatch the heavenly tomes from her." Huanji thought of the beautiful woman who descended from the sky and muttered, "She is the Empress of the Great Zhou?" The Lord of Illusions said, "Such a young 7th-level cultivator. She is the only one in the entire mainland. This woman is very strong. I'm afraid that only the elders of the Sage sect have the strength to fight her." Li Mu was the biggest winner of this trip. As Xianjizi breathed a sigh of relief, he said, "Junior brother, why don't you leave the Great Zhou Court and come to Mount Baiyun to cultivate? The Imperial Court's mission is too dangerous. If anything happens to you, How am I going to explain it to Marshal Uncle Fudarozi? When he heard the news about Li Mu from Hyunjinko, his heart was in his mouth. If something happened to Li Mu, it would definitely be a huge loss that the Fulu school would not be able to bear. After such a thing happened, he could not be at ease letting Li Mu stay in the great Zhou court. As Xianjizi's voice fell, Zhou looked at him indifferently. He did not say anything and looked at the scenery in the distance. However, his fists in his sleeves were tightly clenched. Li Mu shook his head and said, "Cultivation is full of danger, but it is also full of opportunities. If you train yourself more, it will be beneficial for your future cultivation. Cultivating in seclusion at Mount Baiyun is safe, but it will not be beneficial for your future cultivation." Xianjizi sighed and said, "Junior brother's words make sense. Let's do as you say." Zhou Yi continued to admire the scenery, and his fists in his sleeves were slowly loosened. Li Mu stretched out his hand. With a thought, the Dao bell floated in his palm. He looked at Xianjizi and said, "There is a strand of Genesis Qi in the White Emperor cave dwelling. The cracks on the Dao bell have already been repaired. Senior brother, bring it back to the mountain." Just as he finished speaking, the Dao bell buzzed and flew behind Li Mu to hide. Xianjizi said helplessly, "Since the Dao bell is willing to follow junior brother, let it follow you. With the Dao bell by junior brother's side, I will feel more at ease." In truth, Li Mu was just being polite. Who wouldn't want such a powerful treasure? If it wasn't for the Dao bell in the Demon Emperor cave dwelling, they would not have been able to see him. It was also because of the Dao bell that he could be so fearless from beginning to end. Xianjizi looked at Zhou Yi and said, "Junior brother Lingjizi, please take care of him, your majesty." Zhou Yi said indifferently, "I will take care of my people. I don't need you to remind me." Xianjizi did not say anything else. He said to the disciples of the other 5 sects, "Follow me back to Baiyun Mountain. Your elders are also there." The elders of the 5 sects bowed and said yes. Xianjizi led everyone away. Only Li Mu, the empress, and the high priests were left. Li Mu stretched out his hand and absorbed a ball of light into his body. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, a strange light flashed across his eyes. 3 streaks of light flew over from afar. It was the sloppy Taoist priest and the other 2 high priests. The 2 high priests bowed to the empress and said, "Greetings, your majesty." The sloppy Taoist priest only cupped his hands slightly. Chapter 413. Li Mu knew a lot about refining corpses. It was no exaggeration to say that no one in this world knew more about refining corpses than he did. Other than being cunning and cautious, Qianhuan also had another identity. He was the first elder of the demonic Dao's corpse sect. Refining corpses was the corpse sect's ability to make a living. Who in the 10 continents and 3 islands knew more about refining corpses than the first elder of the corpse sect? The corpse sect had always had a special status in the demonic Dao. Even those in the demonic Dao usually stayed away from the corpse sect out of respect. Their strength was ranked at the top of the 10 sects. After all, when fighting with the corpse sect, one had to be careful not only of the corpse sect themselves, but also of their corpses. Some corpse sect madmen refined corpses that were even stronger than themselves. Other than spending all day with corpses, the corpse sect disciples' favorite thing to do was to dig graves. They especially liked to rob the graves of experts. After stealing the corpses, they would use secret techniques to refine them into powerful zombies and turn them into their own corpse puppets. For the opening of the Demon Emperor's cave this time, if not for the fact that the corpse sect was too far away and could not make it in time, all the experts in their sect would have come out in full force. It could be said that the corpse sect's ability to refine corpses was the best in the 10 continents. Other than those techniques that had been lost in inheritance, as time passed, all kinds of techniques were constantly improving and perfecting. The corpse refining techniques of 3,000 years ago were naturally incomparable to those of today. If the 9th Realm White Emperor 3,000 years ago had Qianhuan's experience in refining corpses, and used some special techniques to refine his own corpses, then the newly awakened demon corpses in the White Emperor's cave would have at least been at the 7th realm, if not the 8th realm. Including Li Mu. Everyone who entered the cave would have died. Li Mu had just obtained the White Emperor's memories, and only found the method to control the cave. He did not have time to go through all of it. At this moment he focused on searching and quickly found out the origins of these 10 demon corpses. These 10 corpses were the 10 great demon generals under the White Emperor. Before the White Emperor died, he buried all the demon generals and demon soldiers under him with him. Those demon soldiers would be the first to wake up when an outsider entered the cave abode. They would drain the intruder's spiritual power and weaken their strength. At the same time, they would provide the White Emperor demonic corpse with food for the awakened White Emperor demonic corpse. They would also prevent intruders with full spiritual power from causing trouble for the awakened White Emperor demonic corpse. As for the awakening of the 10 great demon generals, they would also need to consume a large amount of blood, in order to prevent them from competing with his own demon corpses for blood and affecting his resurrection. Emperor Bai chose to seal the demon generals. He planned to awaken them after his own resurrection. This way, the former demon generals would be able to serve him again. Of course, he didn't expect that Li Mu would use his glib tongue to cause a zombie that had just gained consciousness to suffer from schizophrenia. In the end, he forced out his memories, tore apart space, and escaped. He decided to live for himself in the future. Thus, the 10 great demon generals under his command were given to Li Mu. From the White Emperor's memories, 8 of the 10 great demon generals were level 7 spirit demons, and 2 were level 8 Xian demons. Level 8 Xian demons, regardless of whether they were humans or demons, were all super strong cultivators that dominated the continent. 3,000 years ago, they were just buried with someone else. Li Mu was shocked. Zhou saw through his thoughts and explained. 3,000 years ago, the spiritual energy between heaven and earth was much denser than it is now. It was also easier to give birth to strong cultivators. Back then, there were many level 9 humans and demons. In reality, after digesting part of the White Emperor's memories, Li Mu also realized that the spiritual energy between heaven and earth today was much thinner than it was 3,000 years ago. Based on this phenomenon, it wasn't hard to guess how dense the spiritual energy was 6,000 years ago, 9,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, or even in the previous epoch. It was no wonder that the number of strong cultivators was decreasing over the years, even though cultivation techniques were improving. Perhaps in a few thousand years, it would be very difficult for cultivators on this continent to even advance to the middle 3 realms. However, all this had nothing to do with the present. Li Mu temporarily stored the 10 corpses in the Demon Emperor Palace. There was nothing in this dead space, so there was no possibility of them turning into corpses for the time being. Using blood to make the corpses develop consciousness was the lowest level of corpse refining method. If he used all kinds of treasures, supplemented by the corpse nurturing formation, and refined using the corpse sex secret techniques, the White Emperor demon corpse's power would be much more than that when it awoke. However, refining them into demon corpses required a lot of preparation. Li Mu couldn't gather all the materials at the moment, so he needed to plan at length. His main task now was to remodel the Demon Emperor's cave abode. In the past 3,000 years, the ownerless Demon Emperor's cave abode was completely isolated from the outside world. This was the reason for the dead silence in this space. After saying this, she grabbed Li Mu's shoulder, and the two of them descended rapidly. In a few breaths' time, Li Mu stood on the ground again. The rapid descent made him feel dizzy. His body swayed, and only by supporting the Empress did he not fall. Li Mu felt that although his body had returned to the ground, his soul was still in the sky. After calming himself down, Li Mu immediately let go of the Empress, and said helplessly, "Your Majesty, don't be so fast next time." I can't take it," Zhou said. I know. In the next few days, the two of them spent a few more days in their own world. With the Empress's speed, it would take less than an hour to go from the North County to the divine capital, but she didn't seem to be in a hurry at all. She flew slowly with Li Mu along the way. When they reached a town, they would go down to rest, see the local customs, try the local snacks, and shop for some local specialties. 10 days passed, and they hadn't even finished half of the journey. Li Mu was quite anxious at first, but seeing that he wasn't. He treated it as accompanying her on a private tour. For the Empress, who had never left the divine capital before, the outside world was full of novelty. During this time, Li Mu tried many times to comprehend the heavenly book, possessed various monsters, and obtained many cultivation methods of the monster race. What Bai Di had comprehended back then was far less than what Li Mu had comprehended. The cultivation method that he had comprehended and passed down to the monster race was actually only one kind, and it was the cultivation method of the tiger race. However, he had made some improvements on this foundation, so that all monsters could cultivate according to this method, but it was far from being able to unleash the special abilities of the various races. If Li Mu passed down the cultivation method of the monster race that he knew to the corresponding monster race, so that each of the major monster races would have their own cultivation method, the strength of the monster race would definitely rise to another level. Of course, this was tantamount to aiding the enemy, and Li Mu wouldn't nurture the enemy. Unfortunately, he didn't find the cultivation method of the fox race. Although the fox race was also a monster, their cultivation method was its own system. When the nine-tailed fox appeared, all the other monsters would retreat. Their cultivation method should be top-notch. Li Mu guessed that the heavenly book in the hands of the Lord of Illusions might contain the secret of the fox race. He wondered if there was a chance for Xiao Bai to get it. In addition, there was another matter that caused great doubt in Li Mu's heart. In the space where the page was, no matter what kind of monster race it was, their final choice would be the end of the sky. It was as if there was something there that was attracting them. For this reason, these monster race experts were even willing to give up their lives. Li Mu knew nothing about this. At the end of the sky, above the nine heavens hurricane, what exactly was attracting them? Perhaps only they knew. Even Li Mu couldn't find the answer from Emperor Bai's memories. Similarly, the enormous monster he saw in the talisman puppet sex Dao page was also an unsolved mystery in his heart. After wandering outside for more than half a month, Li Mu and the Empress finally returned to Chengdu. The officials were notified that tomorrow's morning court would be held as usual. It seemed that His Majesty's seclusion had ended. Cultivators of the seventh realm could easily go into seclusion for months or even years. Half a month of seclusion was nothing. Surprisingly, Li Mu, who had disappeared for a long time, also appeared at this morning court. The officials didn't know what he had been doing. They only guessed that he was out on a mission with the consecrators. Someone tried to inquire through the consecrators department, but didn't find anything. In the consecrators department, the sloppy Taoist priest had his hands behind his back. He looked around at everyone and said, "Remember this. You didn't see or hear anything. Don't talk nonsense when you go out. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." After returning to the Changle Palace, Li Mu gave the black fox tail that he had plundered from Phantom Princess to Xiao Bai. The weapon in her hand was given to her by Li Mu. Without a doubt, the black fox tail could only unleash its greatest power in the hands of the Fox clan. Xiao Bai loved this new magic treasure very much. Li Mu also took out an elixir that he had plundered from the Demon Palace. With the help of the Empress, Xiao Bai successfully evolved 5 tails. In terms of cultivation, both Li Mu and the Empress could only help her up to this point. She had to complete every step on her own. Li Mu thought of an important matter. He called Xiao Bai in front of him and asked, "Does the Heavenly Fox clan always seek revenge and repay kindness?" Xiao Bai nodded solemnly. Li Mu asked again, "What if there is a person who has both a favor and a grudge against you?" Xiao Bai was stunned for a moment. She didn't seem to expect this situation. She said in confusion, "Well, I don't know." At this time Wan Wan, who had been eavesdropping, trotted over and said, I know. First I will repay his kindness with my body. Then, I will have a bunch of children with him. Every day, I will beat his children for revenge. However, it was impossible to retain all the spiritual power in the Saraira. It was already rare for an eminent monk to leave 10% or 20% of his spiritual power and condense it into a Saraira before he passed away. Even so, to a low-level cultivator, it was a great fortune. If it were someone else, Li Mu might be polite with such a precious gift. However, there was no need for any extra politeness between him and the Empress. Li Mu could sell his life for her and accept such a precious gift from her peacefully. After passing away, the eminent monk who could leave behind a Saraira was at least in the 7th realm. Even if this Saraira only contained 10% of his spiritual power, it was still a huge amount for Li Mu. With this item, Li Mu's Dharma cultivation improved rapidly. In just a few days, he broke through to the 3rd realm. He was not far from the 4th realm, the golden body. If he absorbed all the spiritual power in this Saraira, it was inevitable that he would cultivate the golden body. However, he could not be too hasty. Li Mu's improvement was too fast. He needed to completely stabilize his current realm before he could try to break through. His physical body did not seem to have any changes. However, when Li Mu used the Bai sword to gently slash it, only a white mark appeared on his arm. He channeled his spiritual power and slashed it again. Only then did a shallow cut appear on his arm. However, the wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. It quickly disappeared without a trace. This was only in the 3rd realm. When he cultivated the golden body, combined with the fighting formula, he would be able to fight in close combat or from a distance. His strength would no longer have an obvious shortcoming. The problem that needed to be solved now was that although Li Mu's spiritual power had caught up with the eminent monk's Saraira, it had not completely merged with his physical body. For Buddhist cultivators who cultivated step by step, their spiritual power was hidden in their physical body. Their physical body grew stronger as their spiritual power grew. Li Mu's spiritual power grew too fast. Much of it was still wandering in his physical body. He could not unleash the full power of his physical body. The fastest way to merge the two was to fight. Unfortunately, Li Mu did not have any friends who cultivated Buddhism. Although Mr. Mei and Shangguanli had enough cultivation, their bodies could not take more than a few punches. The Empress could fight him in close combat, but the difference in their strength was too great. It could not be used as a training ground. Moreover, Li Mu did not want to be ravaged by the Empress again. He did not want to personally experience her strength every day. It would cause him to have strange and embarrassing dreams at night. Li Mu thought hard. Suddenly, a light flashed through his mind. He remembered the monk that he and the Empress met in the 9 heavens atmosphere.